Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Fume and their revolutionary approach to flavored air, an ingenious invention that's helping change lives. My friends, Fume has served more than 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use the checkout code SACRED, that's SACRED, to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head to tryfume.com, that's TRYFUM.com, and use the code SACRED to get a free gift with your order today. Again, to experience the wonder of flavored air, head to tryfume.com with the checkout code SACRED. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 327. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my son, little Christopher. Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today, my friend?
I'm well. I only just realized we're all very green today.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I got my Kim Jong-un jacket on, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. Last night I went to that Andre 3000 show. I thought it so for those curious, the last time I brought this up was like a month ago because I was under the impression that it was like that week, but I guess like we just got the tickets like a lot earlier than we usually do. The friend that got him he's more of a spontaneous fellow. So I just kind of assume it's like, oh, that's whatever this is this week. But it actually was last night, and it was really, really cool. It was really strange. But
was Fergie there?
No, Fergie was not there, sadly. But it was cool. It was a really dope show. We were in like the front, like 2 rows or something. So it was like really like it's been a while since I've been to a show. I don't think I've ever been to a show at that proximity to the stage that wasn't like a mosh kind of environment.
Standing room.
Where people are
yeah,
like a standing room. So it was pretty cool, but a little tired today, but well rested despite that. I don't know. There's something going on. Like I feel good, but like I think my body's tired.
You got a real like New York Hispanic thing going on right now. You got like the long sleeve olive shirt, the gold chain kind of hanging out, and the Yankee hat on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really look right at home. Must be excited. The Yankees' big playoff series coming up.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited. I'm excited for Kenneth O'Shaughnessy to take this.
Yeah, he's great. Kenneth O'Shaughnessy's sick.
Yeah, he's great. He's a great front man for the Yankees.
Well, welcome to the show. Dustin Furman, executive producer. How are you today, my friend, wearing your dork-ass Zelda shirt?
Dude, it's even dorkier than you think. It glows in the dark.
Oh, boy.
So,
they always every piece of... Why is merch so bad? That's why I make these shirts.
What are you talking about?
Merch is just so bad. It's like it can't just be a normal Zelda shirt. Now it's got to fucking glow in the dark.
It's just a nice little bonus.
Yeah.
You can't tell 99% of the time unless you're in a completely pitch black room. Then it's like, oh, cool. Glows in the dark. I like it. Little touch. Nothing wrong with that. But I am very well today. Just mowed the lawn. Pre-sacred. It's in a bit of a time crunch, but I made it. Got showered up. And Colin, I'm in that mode right now. The pre-travel stasis.
Yeah.
Where mentioned last week, I'm going to Japan next Tuesday. So every day you're just kind of, now I'm in the waiting mode where you're starting to get things ready, but you don't want to get ready too early. And you're also, I'm reviewing, making sure I have hotels and travel set up correctly, but we're very excited to go. I'm planning to eat a lot when I'm there. Honestly, I might come back 300 pounds this time because I'm not holding back when I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
You shouldn't hold back, and it's so cheap there now that you can do whatever you want. Now, are you flying coach?
Dude, yes. Oof. I looked into, dude, Colin, the price, guess the price to fly first class to Japan. Guess.
First class?
Or even business.
$2,000 one way per person.
More like 10,000
for business, for the intermediary. That's crazy, dude.
Dude, I shit you not.
I wouldn't pay that at all. Obviously.
I thought about it just because, thanks to everyone out there that donated to our GoFundMe, super appreciate it. And I was like, well, this is maybe a chance. I'm never going to do this. And then I looked at the prices. I was like, holy shit. No, and maybe it's because of what time frame we're booking, and there are certain more budget airlines that if you fly out of LAX that you can get a business class that has like a lay down area in it, but those are sold out. Those are sold out months before I even booked. So it is coach indeed.
What are you flying?
I want to say United.
United. Yeah, I flew United to Japan once. Yeah, that'll be fun. I've never flown to Japan anything but coach. It's just so fucking far away, especially from here. Like on the East Coast. Leaving from California is still 14-ish hours, I think, but it's tolerable. It was like when I used to go to Europe from California, I wanted to fucking kill myself. And I knew people in my journalist job at IGN that would literally pay their own money to like get one of the, because like in international flights, there's like 4 different classes. So I know that like the first, like the best shit, like, you know, like you can get like bedrooms on Emirates flights and shit like that, you know, for like $50,000. That's not what I'm talking about. Just like more room, you know,
right?
Because those by the 10th hour or so, I want to fucking kill myself. Like seriously, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And but I never had like a horrible situation. It's just so boring, you know?
Yeah,
it's so boring. And like you're in like the 8th hour of the 16 hours, and you're just like thinking about it, and the time just is elapsing so slowly, and it's like, oh my God. And you look out the window, and you're over the fucking ocean. There's just nowhere to be, nowhere to go. It's like, oh my God, why am I even doing this? We got to get supersonic travel back, dude. You know, I never flew the Concorde. The Concorde has been gone for a while, and the Concorde obviously crashed like twice. So obviously it wasn't the safest thing in the world, but we got to get that back for cross ocean travel. England to New York in 90 minutes. That was the reality. You know,
what?
Now that's a totally different situation. But the Concorde was like, you can't fly the Concorde over land because of the sonic booms. Oh. So you can only do it over the oceans, you know. But those things haul the ass out of the fish. You know, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fuck them.
Yeah,
you know.
The fish.
I'm looking at. I just wanted to make sure if my memory is correct. I just put in a random Tuesday in February, Pittsburgh to Tokyo business class, $6,391.
No,
for business class. And that's Google says these are typical prices.
Yeah, that maybe seems a little more reasonable. I mean, I wouldn't pay that, but depending on. But it's so funny to think about. It's like every time Jim Ryan flies, they pay that.
Oh yeah.
You know, isn't that funny when you think? And he's like flying everywhere. They probably like when Jim Ryan was flying around office to office every month. They were probably literally spending $50,000 a month on his air travel. When you think about it, it's like crazy. You know.
Yeah.
Because there's no way he's flying anything but, and nor should he. I mean. You're a CEO.
He's not sitting in the even more just like in the even more space seats,
right?
You know, like
and it's like 1 inch on all sides. You know, more
that just makes the difference, man.
It's crazy, man. Because I fly first class domestically. I've never flown first class overseas, and it's affordable. Like I've said, as long as you do it in the morning or at night. If you're trying to do it in the middle of the day, I won't say who it is because I don't want to embarrass him, but it pisses me off. We were friendly with like a celebrity, a gaming celebrity when I was that kind of funny, and we used to have him on the show sometimes. And he was in LA, and it used to piss me off because he would only come if we flew him first class. And I'm like, dude, it is an hour flight from LA to San, not even from LA to SFO. It's like, you can't just like give us a break. You know,
that's such a
we have to
waste
pay
of
$1,200 for you to fly instead of $100.
Yeah.
That's a waste. That's a waste of a first class experience to me. Like
I totally agree, because they're not going to feed you. They're not going to do anything. Only cross country or long distances. So like when I flew to San Diego, I flew first class. But when we flew to Houston, I didn't fly first class because it's 2 hours, two hours and change. Like I can raw dog this easy, you know?
Yeah,
no problems. Cheap is good. The cheaper, the better. But then you have to kind of bring in the comfort level and I will say the cross country flight first class thing. It just makes the whole situation different. Like it's not foreboding.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And then
I would imagine
you got to mean mug everyone when they come on the plane. You know?
Yeah, it's great.
I don't really do that, but I was telling Micah, I think I said it at the show, actually. I was like, you got to stare at everyone when they come on the plane. Because she had never flown first class before. Yeah. It's so good. I love it.
so just no emotions. You're not like you have to show that you're not happy that you're in the best fit. Like even you're not satisfied still.
Right.
They have to settle for even less than what you're not satisfied by. It's great.
Yeah, we are lucky. On the way out, we're not in a 3-seater. We got one of the only 2 seats, so we don't have to share with
nice.
anybody.
Really, a 2-seater?
It's not the whole plane. It's just there's a few. There's like a few that are only 2 seats.
Nice. So, that's big. That's big time.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. But
I had on a way to Europe once. I had a seat that was 1 seat.
Oh,
but it was like, it wasn't. I mean, it was fine, but it was like, it was where the bathroom door was, and the bathroom door was like perpendicular to me. So like there was like a row of just like 1 seats, and it was fine because actually people don't really go crazy with the bathroom on international flights, only in the beginning and at the end. But I was it was just a lot of traffic. It was very distracting. And I remember I was watching Homeland on my iPad. Not a great show to be watching during international travel, since it's all about terrorism.
Certainly.
Yeah, not great. No, not great. It's like preloading your iPad with like plane crash compilations. I don't know.
Here we go.
I don't know if this isn't exactly great. I've only
I saw someone watching Lost once. In fact, I think I saw Lost on like one of the rotisserie kind of channel things that they have on one of these planes once, and I'm like, Lost?
Rotisserie?
You know, like how they'll have like, we have like all these ABC shows or all these NBC shows, and you can download the app, and then like we change them. And I remember one of them being Lost and seeing people, and I'm like, dude, this is like the worst show you can be watching right now. Are you
Final
kidding?
Destination 1.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
Someone's face gets melted off in the beginning, I think.
We gotta go back. All right.
Oh man.
Guys, it's good to be here with you today. Not too much to talk about this week. I mean, I'm sure we'll still go a really long time for no reason, but there are a series of small news items, but nothing really great. We're kind of in the post state of play afterglow. And so we've covered all of that stuff, but I do want to get into the 30th anniversary stuff, see if everyone got their pros, see what everyone's doing. We're going to get in all of that, of course. For the people that are uninitiated, welcome. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast over at Last Stand Media. You can get it early and ad-free over on Patreon, patreon.com/Last Stand Media. There are different tiers you can support us at, and you get the early ad-free podcast. You get Sacred Symbols Plus, which is our supplement once a week, and then every other week, twice a week, which is deep dive discussions and all of the rest, which are a lot of fun. I just did a discussion with Brad on Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, which is going to go live on Saturday. I had a conversation with my old IGN buddy, Vince Ingenito. We talked about, he's an old head and even older than me, and just was there and during the PS1 era. And we just talked about all the things that Astrobot's missing and like what could come in future expansions and all the rest, which we're excited about. So check that out. A deep dive on PS5 Pro and PS6 with Tom from Moore's Law is Dead, an Astrobot review discussion and spoiler cast, and so on and so forth. All of that on Sacred Symbols Plus on patreon.com/laststandmedia. Plus, you can get access to our Discord. We're going to talk about that in a minute. RSS access. So just use the RSS links you're provided. Use the podcast services of your choice, including Spotify, to get early access to the shows. Submit your inquiries to the show, and so on and so forth. Merch, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, and so forth. Shipped by my wife, Micah Moriarty, laststandmedia.store. It's still tough to call her Micah Moriarty because I want to call her Micah Watson. Like, it's weird. I see mail come in for her and I'm like, wow, I made a Moriarty. Like, and I don't mean that like, you know, like having a child or anything like that. I mean, like, I got some paperwork done and there's now another Moriarty.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm. You conscripted somebody into your military, basically.
Now, what do you guys think of this? This is interesting. I think this is true, at least for our segment of the Moriarty family. First Moriarty of color? You know, kind of interesting. We got a black woman with an Irish last name, you know, running around misrepresenting herself. Leave nice reviews for the show on podcast services. You can find us on YouTube and follow us there. Comment, do whatever you'd like to do. Do what feels good, but only if you're nice to us. We appreciate you. Of course, one of the perks over at Patreon is submitting your inquiries on the thread we put up in the news feed each and every week. I pick through it, and you'll hear them throughout the show, and we end, of course, with 6 of them later on. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by BetterHelp, an accessible way to explore the therapy you may need to live a happier and more productive life. Learn more now at betterhelp.com/symbols. It goes without saying that all of our lives are filled with trials and tribulations of pretty much any variety you can imagine. You can get caught up in the downs life throws at you no matter what they are, or you can try to work through them to find something better on the other side. And this is where my friends at BetterHelp come into play. As someone who has found therapy useful at different times throughout my 40 years on this planet, I highly recommend seeing a therapist when you face personal troubles that feel insurmountable. But the reason I'm so enthusiastic about BetterHelp in particular is because it lowers all of the most common barriers to entry when it comes to seeking therapy, so that it's more accessible and in reach than ever before. The fundamental aspect of BetterHelp you need to understand at the top is that it's online therapy, conducted over video, audio, or even just by text if you'd prefer. This in and of itself is revolutionary because this means that you can squeeze BetterHelp into your busy schedule no matter where you are without having to worry about time off, an office visit, and so on. And with online delivery of services comes a dramatic drop in cost, which is especially useful for the too many of you out there that don't have adequate insurance and the access that comes along with it. In short, BetterHelp solves the accessibility and convenience problems instantaneously, allowing you to connect with a licensed therapist in short order so that you can work on whatever ails you. Whether you're struggling in a relationship, a friendship, or simply at work, whether you're riddled with anxiety and stress, or simply feeling down and out in life, I believe that therapy can help you get back on the right path. So why not give online therapy a try and see what it might do for you? Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/symbols today. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS to get 10% off your first month of therapy sessions. Again, that's betterhelp.com/symbols for accessible, flexible, affordable, and high-quality therapy that can help you right now. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Fume and their revolutionary approach to flavored air, an ingenious invention that's helping change lives. Learn more now at tryfume.com, that's F-U-M, and use the code SACRED at checkout. So it's not every day that I encounter something that I'm truly impressed by, an idea or whatever, or in this case, a product. Something where I remark to myself, why didn't I think of that? So when Fume first walked into my life as a sponsor of this very show sometime last year, I was left somewhat enamored. You're telling me there's a company making a completely analog device that allows you to pull on it, but which emits no smoke, no vapor, no nicotine, no toxic anything at all? It's true. Fume is the global leader in so-called flavored air devices for a reason. They know what they're doing. So here's what you need to know. Fume is a cylindrical implement made of high-quality maple and steel, and as I noted earlier, it's totally analog. This means that there's no electrical component to it whatsoever. There's no battery, there's nothing to charge, nothing burns or smokes, nothing like that at all. Instead, within your Fume, you place replaceable cores, and these cores come in a wide variety of flavors/scents, including my favorite orange vanilla, but also old standbys like sparkling grapefruit and raspberry lemon, and new additions like peach blush, and a host of other options too. Now, flavored air has an obvious and overt use as a replacement to smoking and vaping, and it's here that a lot of people will focus. And rightfully so. Fume is doing things the right way, helping extract people from a particularly bad set of habits. But honestly, Fume is awesome even if you're not looking for a route to cessation. I have mine here in my office and pull on it as I work, and I find it quite delightful. It's subtle and totally health neutral, and in a world trying to kill me more and more each day, well, I find that quite tantalizing in and of itself. Hell, Fume is fun to merely fidget with, nonetheless pull on, but I digress. My friends, Fume has served more than 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use the checkout code SACRED, that's SACRED, to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head to tryfume.com, that's TRYFUM.com, and use the code SACRED to get a free gift with your order today. Again, to experience the wonder of flavored air, head to tryfume.com with the checkout code SACRED. Well, let's spread or stretch our legs depending on what's going on. Diddy Dong's Quest wrote in and said, are we not going to discuss that on last week's Sacred at exactly 2 hours, 56 minutes, and 40 seconds? Bill Clinton flashed across Chris's screen. I was eating some gabagool when I noticed something flicker on the screen. When I went back and slowed it down, there was President Clinton. Surprised nobody acknowledged it. I did notice this, but I didn't know what it was. And I have to be honest with you, because you were at your parents', right, last week?
Yeah, I was in New York.
So I actually thought it was a cat. Like, you know, so like, that was just like what went into my mind. Because, you know, Gene's cat is always like in and out of the shot and all of that and just walking across.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, so I didn't even, it was, because everything's kind of artifacted in, you know, low res when we're recording. So I didn't see that it was Bill Clinton. So I didn't say anything about it because I was like, oh, it must be like a cat or something.
It's like,
but
it's like the Bigfoot footage, the blurry, blurry Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like,
I love that.
I thought the same thing, though I didn't think it was a cat necessarily. I saw that it was the shape of a person. I thought, oh, someone walked in front of Chris's camera. And then this totally was a mindfuck because I was like, but Chris is at a desk. So how did this happen? Like, was there some kind of like House of Leaves, house shift situation? I don't know.
It was an Oopa Loopa.
But then, you know, I think, Colin, you were mid-sentence or something. Yeah, and so, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll ask later. But then the moment passed, and now the audience, they knew who it was. Bill.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't notice it. I love little Easter eggs like that, but I just didn't notice it.
No, I did. Yeah, I like to make sure the viewer is paying attention. You know, make sure they're watching.
Someone should be. I mean,
I had yeah, I was like, I don't know, like I haven't sat at that desk when we recorded. I hadn't really like, you know, I wasn't really sitting at the desk most of that time. I was kind of like with family doing some other stuff, taking care of some stuff, and so I hadn't been there in like months. And so there was all this stuff that I forgot about. And I forgot that I had these 2 Christmas cards from like a girlfriend I used to date in like 2012. We're friends still to this day, but like they were like on my desk, and they were like cutouts of presidents. And one of them, like, there's 3 of them. There was like one that was Reagan, one that was Bill Clinton, and one that was Obama. And the Bill Clinton one's so funny because there's like a kiss mark on his like, there's like lipstick stains on his collar or whatever. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is real. But I don't know. I just wanted to play with the camera, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Here's the thing about Bill Clinton, and this is not a political statement. I actually think Bill Clinton was a fine president, whatever. I was a teenager, so I wasn't really paying close attention. Yeah. But there is no one in recent memory, maybe until Trump perhaps, but that is so clearly criminal that it actually is insane. You know,
yeah,
like where it's like, who do you think you like? You are so clearly fucked up. When you saw the picture of his painting of him in a dress at at the island fucking sanctuary or whatever, I was like, are you kidding? You know, like this is crazy. It's just crazy. It's all happening in the open. Like there's no repercussions.
Oh, dude,
anything this man does or has done, it's crazy. Criminal.
Yeah, you know, that all looks. It's so funny too because it's like that all. It's so. There's such a hefty volume of it, and even that looks quaint compared to like some of the stuff today. You know what I mean? Like it's an adorable amount of criminality in comparson.
I actually agree with that. Now. I will say it's so funny. Like I still think about it because I was in like 9th or 10th grade during the Lewinsky thing. But like I'll always remember, it's like I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky, and it's like, dude, you blew a load on her dress and she has it. Are you a fucking retard? Like, did you not think about any of like? It's just crazy how brazen it was. You know, like looking back at it, it's like you're such a liar. You're such a liar. But I will say this: maybe the Lewinsky thing's kind of fucked up because she was an intern and she was young and he was taking advantage of her in some sense, no doubt, and ruined her life basically. I mean, if you read about her, it's kind of sad.
Yeah,
in some sense. But it's like there also was a time where JFK just had a fucking Rotary Club of women coming into the White House and no one gave a shit. And everyone knew. And there's something to be said about that too, where it's like, it's not really important. In fact, if JFK's feeling limber, that's all the better for us because we're getting a higher performing president, you know? So it's like, do what you got to do, you know, fuck Marilyn Monroe, do what you got to do. It's fine.
Get him loosened up. Yeah. Like even with the Trump stuff, it's like, whenever I heard that, like, the whole, like he had sex with the porn stars, I was like, I don't care.
No, me neither. I could give a shit.
I could give a fuck.
The funny thing is he just straight up says it never happened.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know about that, but it's not, but it is fair to say it's no one's business. Unless you run for president and then everything becomes everyone's business. Then now we're hearing like Kamala Harris's husband, like apparently beat up his old girlfriend or something like that. It's like, what is going on here? Like, and how do we not have really adequate vetting? For instance, if I were a presidential candidate and I was vetting a vice presidential candidate, I wouldn't be like, let's do a normal vetting. I'd be like, you got to find everything, like everything. Yeah. And then still things come out. I have no idea how that happens. Like, these are supposed to be professionals. Haven't you guys seen House of Cards?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things though where it's like, could we vet anybody now who would reasonably pass?
Right. Especially if they've risen to a stature where they could be eligible for vice president, you know?
Yeah.
Certainly there's some shit going on.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I just think about like there probably wasn't much vetting going on pre-internet time anyway, like in comparison to like what's going on now. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure there's shit that like George Washington was doing that we don't know about. He had lead teeth You know, he's probably all sorts of fucked up.
Oh, he was fucking hallucinating all of the time.
That's why he was so scary. That's why he was so intimidating on the battlefield. He's like, there's some lead poisoned 6'8" freak running around in the woods killing British people. What the hell's going on? But yeah, I don't know. I think it's because at some point we're going to have a president who has like really cringe YouTube videos out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, that's going to happen. Or like TikToks where they did like the Harlem Shake or whatever. It's like, is this who we want representing our democracy?
Yeah.
And it's some guy shaking his ass or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's comedic at this point.
I concur.
One thing too is like,
yeah, no, go ahead.
One thing quick, I even noticed like during the VP debate, like you could tell Vance is a millennial because he was like,
yeah, oh yeah, he was doing the gym. He was doing the gym stare at the camera.
Yeah, he was doing like the YouTube like side profile look at the camera because it's like that's the best shot. It's like it's so funny.
It's funny you bring that up because that's what I was going to bring up about the VP debate was just I was watching it and it was over and I was like, why aren't these people running for president?
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, can we flip the tickets? These are way better people.
What the fuck are we doing? Everything's fucked up. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Get out there and vote, please. I don't care who you vote for, but definitely exercise your vote. If you're American. If you're coming over the border illegally, you're going to vote anyway, probably. That's fine too. I don't care.
Yeah.
All right.
Ian Miles Chong.
Ian Miles Chong. He is, I've DM'd with him a few times over the years. I am, I don't know him at all. We have not done anything serious with each other at all, but I am fascinated by him. Like, there is something, wouldn't you want to see a documentary? Like, who is this person? Like, I would love to know more. Like, who are you? It's so strange.
Didn't he start at Game Ranks?
Yeah, he was like a left-wing anti-Gamergate person who transformed into like a right-wing culture warrior, but he's Malaysian, I think. Mm-hmm, and which is fine. It's like, cool. I don't give a shit, but why do you love America? Like, you don't live here. You know? You seem very engaged with us. That's cool. That's fine. It's like what we say, like, is there an anti-Akihabara in Japan where it's all American people playing Fallout? Or all like Japanese people playing Fallout and Halo?
Right. I don't know. The only thing I heard about him that I remember was that he bragged to a sex worker about swatting a dog, which is a hilarious sentence. If there ever was one, but
yeah, that was
interesting person.
I got to read like a Wikipedia of him or something. I've never done that. Do you know the other guy I was thinking of recently? It was like the guy who tried to get the toothbrush from Target for like $1. Do you remember that?
Oh,
and then like
so familiar.
Yeah, like he like shamed some Target employee that wouldn't honor this like bogus price for a toothbrush. And then people ended up raising like a shit ton of money for the woman.
That's so crazy.
He pops up still every once in a while and people still bring it up. It's like, damn, that was crazy. A crazy moment.
It's David Leavitt.
Oh, Leavitt. Yeah, Leavitt.
Leavitt.
Yeah, I don't know who he is, but all right. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Frolic Room wrote in an LA bar. Also a 311 song. It says, hey, CDC. Colin needs to be held accountable since he is the main person preaching about proper social etiquette. In last week's episode, Colin sneezed and Chris politely said, bless you, in a wild turn of events. Our Lord Saint Colin doesn't say thank you and completely ignores Chris's kind gesture. I don't demand much, but Colin, you need to apologize to Chris and say thank you next time. Now go to the corner and think about what you did. I actually totally agree with you, Frolic Room. I never knowingly let the bless you linger. You know, I am a thank you person, and I say bless you to people. My wife and I talk about it sometimes, like, why are we still doing this? Like, people have been afraid. Let me back up. People, obviously, everyone knows. You say bless you because there's like, you know, you're cursed or something, like you have spirits coming out of you or whatever. Okay. Over time, germ theory has developed and like all of these different things. And even before that, people understood you were sick and whatever the case might be, or you were expelling things from your lungs. You have allergies or whatever the case might be. We've gone through, I would say, no fewer than 35 generations of people who are afraid of being impolite by not saying thank you or by not saying bless you. And so we continue hundreds of years later still saying it. It's kind of weird. Like, you can write a whole abstract on this about Why are we saying this to each other when we sneeze?
Yeah.
In 2024, but I'm part of the problem because I refuse. I say it to fucking strangers. Most of the time, they ignore me, by the way. I would say 3 out of 4 times, you don't get anything back from the person. But once in a while, you get a very grateful stranger. But then you have to think, like, why are you acknowledging that I'm sneezing? We're in the supermarket.
Yeah.
You know? It is. I dare people to think deeply about this. Go 3 or 4 levels down on it. And you're going to fucking lose your mind. I'm telling you right now.
See, we have almost zero kindness and courteousness amongst strangers at this point. So maybe it's a good thing, you know, that there's people barely say hello to each other. I'm not saying hello to a random stranger almost ever.
Really? I'll say hello to strangers. You know?
Maybe.
Well, let me put it this way for you, okay? If I'm walking around, I just live in a suburban neighborhood, right? And you, Dustin, you've been here, like, you know, so you can kind of visualize it.
Right.
Walking the dogs, whatever. You see people you know. But then often you see people from other neighborhoods and stuff. Everyone's just walking or listening to music or riding a bike or whatever. I acknowledge every person that's like on the sidewalk, even on the other side, because I feel like it's awkward not to, where I'm like, hello. Just something like that to disarm them in some way. I'm not trying to have a conversation with you. And then maybe half the time someone will ignore you, you know, about that. Like I noticed this especially with like not younger kids who are like really, like if they're playing outside, they're really friendly. Like some kid was showing me his books the other day. Like, so they have no idea what's going on. But when they get a little bit older, they're the ones that I find ignore you the most, which I'm trying to be like friendly and disarm you in some sense of being like, oh, I'm just like a dude hanging out here, no danger or anything like that. Hello, you know? And they just like walk straight by you and you can tell that they're being told by their parents, like, don't talk to anyone.
If someone says hello to me.
But I feel like that's reinforcing the antisocial behavior. You know? Well, just give me a neighborly hi back, kid. Like, hello, how are you?
Maybe the thought process is like, why are you trying to present yourself as not dangerous? That's exactly something a dangerous person would do.
Right. You know? Right.
It is unfortunate that we are so suspicious of everybody. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think generally, actually, if I hear somebody sneeze and they're like within earshot of me, I'll say bless you to strangers. And I think I've sneezed in public and had like multiple strangers say like bless you. And it's like, I think that's pretty common. I think that's actually like Dustin said, I actually think it's like one of the few things that we should probably embrace a little bit more. It's just like, let the few instances where we do treat each other with like some level of kindness, like let that be, you know, let's not dissect it too much.
Yeah. Dustin, you were going to say something? Excuse me.
I was going to say, when someone says hello to me, to not say hello back, that is, I would believe, is 100% rude.
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy.
Right.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I will always say hello back, but I don't know. When I'm walking around, I'm just trying to not, you know, if I'm walking Frisk or whatever, I'm just trying to not bother anybody, you know? It's probably the wrong mindset, but very rarely say hello randomly. But
I've told this story in the past in other contexts, but it's the reason it's stuck with me. Well, when I was in LA for E3 one year, and IGN used to stick us in Skid Row in fucking Airbnbs because they probably wanted us to die so they can collect life insurance on us or something like that. Like, so I was walking back to my place one night after coming from the war room, and there was a girl, like a woman, this blonde woman, like walking towards me, and walked into the street, and like it was like in the middle of the night, so it was like empty, into the middle of the street, like in an arc, like a crescent around me, and then went back. And I was like, now you have to imagine what she's seen and been through and like the things people have said to her. But in that moment, I remember being like, how could I present as like neutrally or like as friendly as possible? And I think it might have been at that point where I try to be like, hello, and just walk by, or like, how are you? And by the way, this isn't in cities. So when I lived in San Francisco or LA, you're not talking to anyone on the street. You're walking by. Maybe if you're like on a back street or you're like in a residential area and you walk by someone, you might say hello. But if you're walking on, but in a suburban area where everyone's there because they live there, and like it seems strange to me that people aren't friendlier. And I agree with you. I find it. I'm not offended by it. I'm somewhat steely about that sort of thing. I mean, just read my Twitter feed someday, you know, and someone saying hello to you is not gonna phase you in any way. But I do feel like it is rude. I agree with you. It is strange. Sometimes maybe they can't hear you because they have headphones in or something like that. There's this one guy that jogs around my neighborhood and he just doesn't even acknowledge or look at you. Like I've stopped saying anything.
He's
and I'm
focused.
like, wow, like you're like, it's crazy. And he doesn't have headphones in or anything like that. And I'm like, that's just so weird. You know, that's antisocial in some sense. We're social people. Dude, the little kids though, man, they're so funny. Like there's this one little girl that lives a few doors down from me. I'm friendly with her dad and she's like always got video game stuff on. She's always talking about video games and it's really like Sonic. And I have to pretend that we like Sonic, you know, so we don't insult her, you know, because what I really want to say to her is like, Sonic sucks. Why don't you play Mega Man? And then this other little boy down the street, I'm walking the dogs and he's like, let me show you my new books. There's some age where like kids just have no idea. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, they're just excited to be people.
Yeah.
And then, the world is like, no, stop.
Kids are funny,
We're supposed to live in perpetual shame of everything that we enjoy.
Kids are funny.
And you're like, oh yeah.
You want to hear something really? It's faux antisocial that I do, but it's. We have a joke. It makes my nephews laugh, and Dagan thinks it's funny too. Where we try to say thank you to our mom first when we have dinner, because all the other thank yous don't mean as much. Because you know when someone's like, "Hey, thanks for that," and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, thank you." You know, you want to be the first one. So I always like when we sit down to say dinner. I'm like, "Hey, mom, you know, it's everyone's quiet down. I'm like, Mom, thank you for dinner." You know, and then it just disarms everyone else's ability to say thank you because it sounds, and then you have to wait. Maybe if I wait for 20 minutes, then my thank you will sound more authentic. You know,
right? Yeah.
So I highly encourage people to play this game.
Your thank yous are on a cooldown, kind of.
Right, exactly. And my oldest nephew will play that game with me where he'll try to say the thank you first because you have to. It just it doesn't sound as meaningful if you're. It's like the person that runs up to the injured person first and is like, "Are you okay?" And then like the second and third person kind of walk up. Yeah. And it's like, you don't care as much.
Yeah. You could argue what makes it truly meaningless is that it's become a game for you, but
yeah, I don't mean it.
You know, just trying to score points.
Right.
Here.
All right. Neil Devlin wrote in, Dustin, I'm going to need you on this one. Says, hey boys, the Sacred Symbols Discord channel up to 5 minutes. Discuss. What's going on over there?
So I could tell you about past 5-minute timers. This current one, I'm not as involved right now in the Discord. I pop in there here and there, but still kind of away from that for the most part. But the reality is they 100% deserved it. I believe it, whatever was going on. The thing with Discord servers is that, people like to bait, they like to fight. And so sometimes the quickest way to calm down a situation is just limit everyone's ability to speak for a bit. So I believe it's back now to 2 minutes, but man, something about the Sacred Symbols channel.
Please be normal.
Be normal.
You guys just be normal.
Be normal challenge for these people. Impossible.
Yeah, it's we appreciate you. You're amongst our super fans. Some of you intimidate people out of the Discord. I've seen even in past years where it's like people feel like it's too hostile, or it's like, can't everyone just be nice to each other? We don't do that kind of show.
Yeah,
the show is austere and earnest sometimes, but it's silly and stupid. We're not mean people. How can you think you can come into our place of business and feel like you can be mean? We don't put out that vibe. That's the thing that confuses me a little bit. I understand some of these other content creators would. By the way, can you hear Treble barking in the background? No? Okay, that's good. Because she's barking at something. Please stop. Thank you. She's still going.
I thought you were talking to them.
No,
the Discord people.
Please stop.
Oh yeah, no.
Please stop.
Please stop. Micah's out right now, so the dogs are just going crazy. In fact, I think Treble destroyed one of Micah's magazines. She gets upset when she's not getting attention. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I wanted to just say, be nice to each other over there. Didn't we have to get rid of the politics channel completely at some point? Yeah.
You can't host political discussions anywhere.
So whatever. Just be decent. Up to 5 minutes. Yeah, not ideal. I've said this before, but I really feel like I've observed this in every forum that I've ever really participated in. going back to my childhood, really. So it's not anything unusual. But there are people in these places where they think they're the main character. You know? And really, there should be no main characters in the forum space. It's supposed to be about people kind of collectively discussing, hanging, chilling. Do you want to use an old piece of nomenclature?
It's funny too, Colin, because over the years we've had this Discord, we've had a really great experience with it overall, been able to interact with our fans, and more importantly, our fans interact with one another, then meet each other at shows, become real friendships. It's great. I wouldn't trade it at all. But every once in a while, you get a character who like rises the infamy ranks in the Discord. And some of them have gotten very good at where we have discussions. It's like, should this person really hasn't broken the rules, but everyone hates them? So we don't want to ban someone for something like that. So we like watch them, and eventually rules do get broken and then they're out. But when this happens, there's a void. There's like a power void in certain channels. And so someone was banned relatively recently that was a problem. And so now there's the power vacuum. And so instead of trying to rise the ranks of infamy, which will eventually just result in you getting banned, do what Colin says. Just be nice, blend in with everybody else, contribute, argue. Arguing's okay. Be nice about it.
Take a penny, leave a penny.
Nah, man. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
I mean, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, I it's funny. I've said this in the past, and I don't think people understand it, and maybe it's just like some weird like name blindness thing that I have going on or something, but like really, with rare exception, using forums and Twitter and all that, people are like, I don't even look at people's names a lot of the times. Like, I have no idea who's saying anything. I'm like looking at what's being said, you know? If you like on the old NeoGAF or something, and I would just scroll through and it's like, oh, who said that? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I was just rolling through. I have no idea who's saying what. I don't associate names with things that were said and stuff like that. I just, and I'm afraid to, well, I'm not afraid to admit it. It's just true. Like in our own Discord, it's like, I have no idea I have no idea who the power users are, who's saying what, who's who. I have no idea. I really don't. You know, I didn't when I used it more regularly. And I certainly don't now, because I just don't use it like that. I'm really just reading. It's like a stream of consciousness. It's not even really important who's saying it. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Twitter, you know, where it's like, it really is just a stream of consciousness. It's who's saying it is like less interesting than what's being said. So I kind of bring that in with me. And so I don't really see I wish I knew more about that. Like, someone should sit me down one day and give me like a 90-minute primer on the power struggle on the Last Stand Discord. You know?
There is proof that this is true, Colin, what you're saying, because somebody at Sacred 300 that helped you with a question that I believe you gave a hug to was one of your final interactions in the Discord was with this user for being a dickhead.
Oh, interesting. That's it. Well, but this kind of goes into the point. It's like, it doesn't really matter because I don't even know who I was mad at. Like, there are definitely people out there that think that like we had interactions or like negative or frankly positive too, where it's like, if you told me what the interaction was, I would probably remember it. But if you told me who you were, I'm like, I don't know. You know, I'm just not good at keeping that shit straight. And that goes all the way back to like me using IRC and shit and GameFAQs forums. And like, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea who's saying anything. All right. Thank you for writing in, Neil, and be nice to each other for Christ's sake. All right, guys, I'm going to present to you the duality of man. These two inquiries came in this week on the newsfeed on patreon.com/laststandmedia, apropos of nothing, and of course, unrelated to each other. In fact, one came in last night, one came in today, right before I deleted the thread. I'll read them both. Justin Soprano wrote in and said, "Hey, SS, this is a statement. Five Guys is amazing and priced exactly how it should be. I'm tired of people saying different. Unlimited toppings when every other place charges $1 or $2 for cheese, and those Cajun fries and the chocolate peanut butter milkshake worth every single cent, and I'm broke in Vancouver, Canada." But then Raul Hernandez wrote in and said, "Hello, Dracula, Colin, Mummy, Chris, and the thing from the Black Lagoon, Dustin." Five Guys. What a waste of $25. Colin is always praising this place. I had their burgers on how much Colin boasts on how they are better than In-N-Out. Oh, what a waste of money and time. In-N-Out for life. I am from Los Angeles since most of the U.S. doesn't have In-N-Out. Don't settle for basic burgers. Colin is wrong. Take care, guys. Dustin, hope things are best. This is interesting. I wonder what kind of energy asked you guys to write in about this on the same show. Now, Micah and I were discussing this recently. We have a new Five Guys near our house. The closest Five Guys to us was like 20 minutes away. It's just like, eh. But the newest one is like 8 minutes away. You order right on the app, and then you just get in the car and you drive over there and it's ready, and you just get back in the car and come back. It's great. And we were saying, like, it's actually not, it was more expensive before the era of inflation. But now that you go to McDonald's and like a double cheeseburger meal, like a number 4, number 3, whatever it is, costs like $12. It's like, that's fucking insane. But going in and paying $15 for like a burger and some fries at Five Guys, when the quality is so much higher and inflation has eroded all this stuff away, so that it actually feels much more appropriate, because it doesn't feel like their prices went up. And so,
no, yeah.
Like, so Micah gets a little, so for people that don't know, there you can only get really a few things at Five Guys. You can get a cheeseburger or a hamburger, which are double cheeseburger or double hamburger. And then you can get little cheeseburger or little hamburger, which are single cheeseburger or hamburger. And you can get like a hot dog and like a grilled cheese. And so I get Micah gets a little hamburger and I get 2 little cheeseburgers. And then we get a large fry, and I get a vanilla shake with mine or whatever, and she gets a drink. And it was like $35. And I'm like, honestly, it's not that bad, all things considered. Because if we went to McDonald's and got this much food, it would actually be comparable, if not more. And I like McDonald's. Like I've said many times, we have the good McDonald's near us, like the best McDonald's I've ever been to. And it's so consistent. It's amazing. I have no idea what they're doing there, but it's awesome. But even then, it's not the same. It's not worth it. And it's funny to me, Raul, that you would describe what's great about In-N-Out, and I had In-N-Out twice or 3 times actually when I was in California. Because I love In-N-Out. But it's interesting. In-N-Out is the basic burger.
Right.
Like, it's a very basic thing. It's so good and it's consistent. But In-N-Out is not the sophistication of the Five Guys. The level of toppings, the size of the portions, all of the rest. So I think you're kind of describing 2 different things. I think In-N-Out should be compared to McDonald's, because it's like base level, entry level fast food, where I think Five Guys is more akin to a Chipotle.
Fast casual.
Fast casual. Sure. So I where are you guys on this? We all are Five Guys fans, I think.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the price has actually kind of, unfortunately, it's unfortunate that this is true, because it means everything's fucked up. But the price doesn't seem so bad anymore to me.
Yeah. I don't know. The thing to me is that everywhere I go, even pre-inflation, by the way, like I've always felt like things were just overpriced inherently. Like, so I on some level, Five Guys always struck me as like, all right, well, at least they're not pretending, like they're not pretending to be like a cheese, like, oh, look at the value. It's like, no, this is expensive, but you're going to get something that I think is worth it. And I will say there is a quality differential based on the Five Guys. Like, it's not quite as uniform as you would imagine, because I've been to some Five Guys and I'm just like, that was not good. You know what I mean? Like, that was the bun was all fucked. But I've been fortunate enough that the Five Guys that exist around the places that I lived, the ones that I would go to the most consistently, happen to be like consistent, like really good, like every single time. It's like, okay, this slaps every single time. The delivery options, sometimes I'll get it delivered, and that's where it gets iffy, because they'll keep it in the bag too long, and then the fries will get soggy, and then it's like, but usually like right out of the gate, like if I'm there and I pick it up, always great.
That's why we go get it, because even I don't like risking that either. It's got to be quick. It's like Chick-fil-A. Like, Chick-fil-A doesn't constitute. You got to eat it quick.
Exactly.
Yeah. And In-N-Out's the same.
Yeah. And I don't know. To me, In-N-Out's out of the question for me for 2 reasons. Those drive-through lines are ridiculous.
Oh my God, fucking crazy.
So the fact that you would say it's a waste of time and money to go to Five Guys over In-N-Out is crazy, because I would argue that there's like a value in your time, the only non-refundable currency that we have, where we're sitting in line for 20 minutes for a $1 cheeseburger. It's like, I get it from a value proposition standpoint, but like I can't do that. But the second thing is, they don't put bacon on their burgers, and that is insane. Like, I cannot abide by a place that makes burgers and does not offer a bacon burger. That's just crazy. This is crazy to me. It's like my default burger. It's like I usually, from Five Guys, it's usually like a little bacon cheeseburger and like maybe like a shit ton of like Cajun fries is my go-to. And like maybe a milkshake if I'm feeling crazy, you know? But you got to put bacon on a burger. I don't know. I think they work so well.
The milkshakes at Five Guys, I love vanilla milkshakes. Like, I think they're if they're really thick, and I really love it. But it's like, I don't get it very often, but when I go to Five Guys, I gotta get the shake, dude. You know, I gotta go all in on the 2,500 calories. Like, I gotta just go all in.
They got good shakes, man.
Yeah, I remember, and I get the little whipped cream on the top. You know,
yeah.
I saw someone when I was there last time get a bacon milkshake where like they took some of the bacon and like crumbled it into it. I was like, this is getting fucking hardcore.
I've seen that, and I've always been so curious to try it, but I'm scared. I feel like a little cowardly in the shadow of a bacon milkshake. Like, there's something about it. It's daunting.
I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. And I might have mentioned this to you before, but at Dulles International Airport, Washington D.C., which I've flown in and out of many times when I would come visit my mom, because Richmond's kind of it's getting better, but it's hard to get direct flights here. There's a Five Guys there in one of the terminals that opens at 6 a.m.
Ooh.
And on multiple occasions, I've gotten the most gratuitous shit that you could possibly imagine at 6 a.m. And I remember the last time I did it. Now, this all happened before COVID, so maybe things are different now. I don't know, but people will know that it's a really good Five Guys there, actually, in Dulles. And there was another person online with me there, and we both kind of gave each other like the knowing, like, what are we doing? Like, we both know exactly what's like. I was looking forward to this, and I feel like you were too. You know,
yeah.
Really disgusting shit. So shout out to Five Guys.
Yeah. As far as the value thing, Colin, you are right. I didn't think about it in the perspective of fast food right now is so expensive. It's stupid. Like, whether it's McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, whatever, all of them have gotten insanely expensive. And for the most part, Five Guys, you're right. I haven't been to Five Guys very recently, but it's tough because it's getting to the point for me where if Five Guys is around, you could sit at an actual quality restaurant and get a meal made by a cook or a chef. Maybe not chef, but you know what I mean? Like, my favorite place here in Butler, you guys have been there, the Chop Shop. I can get a burger there for $13, $14. And it's amazing. It's the best burger I've ever had in my life. And between Holly and I, it's cheaper than Five Guys. So Five Guys for me, I still love it. I mean, it's great. It has something special to it. I don't know what it is about their burgers. Very good. But it's an occasional thing for me. And that's mostly due to we don't have one here. The closest Five Guys is 40 minutes away.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't end up going unless I'm traveling usually.
Well, look, Five Guys should be occasional. like if it's not occasional, there's probably like you got to go to the doctor.
Yeah,
you know, like or you got to make sure that you're working to make sure that that's okay. It's like, dude, there's a Five Guys so close to me. It's a genuine feat of will. Like it's so difficult not to default to it. Because I know at any point I could just walk over, and I know that I don't have to deal with like soggy fries or anything. It's just like a perfect burger every single time. And it's like, ooh, I gotta stop.
Dude, when I went back to Northeastern for the first time, I graduated, I guess, in 2007, and I didn't go back there until 2016 or 2017. I was there for PAX or something. And I went back and I was just walking around, and there used to be a Burger King there, which was cool. And but it was like kind of shitty, and it didn't really appeal. It was like really appealing when you were a freshman and you're like, oh my God, there's a fucking Burger King. Go to Burger King. And then like he gets really old, and it's like they're kind of mean in there and everything. And then I went back and I'm like, oh my God, the Burger King's gone. It's a fucking Five.
Oh, upgrade.
And but dude, I was like, oh my God, I would have been fucked. You know, like it, like I would have been so fucked. If this, like, I was almost grateful, and I ate there and all of that, and it was awesome. Because the only other place that I really liked eating that was like fast food around Northeastern at that time which is also not there anymore, is Quiznos. And Quiznos was mega expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially, I used to pay like, it was like almost $20 for like some of these fucking crazy subs they would do.
Can I say, I loved Quiznos unironically.
Me,
Like
I did too, but it was really expensive. Yeah,
it was expensive, but dude, they had this chicken carbonara sub that was so fucking delicious that I would get it. I think almost every like I think twice a week at least when I was coming back and forth from college. And then they just closed down. Like, I don't know. I think they just like priced everybody out of buying their stuff, I think. Because everybody's just like, if I'm gonna get like a fast food sandwich, I might as well just go to Subway where it's cheaper, even if it is way shittier. Like Quiznos was really good. But it's that makes me, dude, when you were mentioning if the Five Guys was around at that time, you would have been so fucked. I had the opposite feeling being back home in New York because I had to go pick up food from this Dominican restaurant. I was like, oh, this is a Dominican restaurant around here? What the fuck? That's crazy. That's awesome. And I went to it, and it was across the street from my old school. And I remember being like, God damn it. When I was going here, there was nothing. There was like a really shitty gas station and a really shitty deli that made garbage. And now I go here, and it's like, now the gas station's built up. It's like a fucking duplex. And then and there's a Dominican restaurant. There's like a great Chinese food spot. I'm like, this is
yeah, that's a bummer.
It's not fair at all. I hate it. It's so upsetting.
That's funny, man. Yeah, I didn't know you were a Quiznos fan too. Yeah, I had my moment with Quiznos, but I really do remember it was like 2005 or something. You'd go in there and get like the roast beef, garlic, whatever thing they had, the large one, and a chips and a Coke or whatever. And it would literally be like at that time, like $17 or something. And I remember, and that was a lot of money, like especially for me then, and it's still a lot of money today. But I remember like I would split it in half and like eat it over the day and kind of feel like, oh, I'm going to treat myself today. A little Quiznos. But they are one of the restaurants that I think overexpanded. Like Krispy Kreme is like the pinnacle of that, of like getting crazy with it and then like totally floundering. And I think Quiznos was like kind of like that. Dude, it's funny though. Like I was reading about Subway where they've come to realize like we can't charge this much for food. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen this recently where like Subway has gotten so comically expensive that they're like, it's like, and they're really suffering because people have this built-in thing where they're like, I remember these being $5, and now it's like 11. That just doesn't make any sense. And so there is a limit to what somebody. And I also think there's just better quality stuff. When I was a kid, and you guys too, it was like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and like Taco Bell. I mean, on Long Island, that was kind of like what we had. And then now there's all these awesome options, like The Habit. I really like that place a lot. And Five Guys is kind of a newer thing. When my mom showed me Five Guys, she literally told me it was in Washington D.C. when my stepdad, he's in the FBI and he worked there for a while in D.C. So he lived there and we would go and visit him or whatever. And she's like, you got to try this place. And she knew me that well.
Yeah.
Where she was like, you have got to have this place, Five Guys. And I'm like, okay. And I just fell in love. So shout out to fast food. Shout out to cheeseburgers.
Yeah, there's also just better for Subway. There's also just better options for that type of food. Like even just like, I don't know. Like I personally love Jersey Mike's. Like there's an Italian sub that I get from there like every time, and it's just like it slaps so fucking hard. And it's just like if I'm gonna pay more for a sub, I might as well go to like not Subway, or Jimmy John's. I haven't had as much Jimmy John's in my life, but like I've heard that place is all right too. So it's just
Jimmy John's is cool because it's quick and cheap.
Yeah, that's more for like hot sandwiches, I think, right? Like I feel like I associate that with like more hot.
Yeah, I don't know what they do. I would get like a BLT, but I don't know what other things, because they really have like a limited amount of options. It's and they would deliver and stuff like that. There was one in San Francisco that I used to go to a lot because it was quite affordable. But yeah, Jimmy John's is good. Jersey Mike's I had one in Santa Monica, but I almost never went to it for some reason. Oh, but the reason is because Bay Cities was. I'm not going to go to fucking Jersey Mike's if I can go to Bay Cities.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Anyway, enough of this. Vinny Pepperoni wrote in and said, it was mentioned in passing last week that Colin had never seen Shrek. Could this possibly be true? Shrek 1 and 2 are unironically classics. Have an ogre-loving day. Now, let me have an earnest conversation with everyone right now. You guys can. Mm-hmm. Do I need if I watch Shrek? Am I going to be happy that I watched Shrek? Dustin?
This is tough because Chris and I grew up with Shrek.
Right.
And it was so groundbreaking at the time. Because for me, I think it was 2002, I was in second grade. And we had never seen a movie like this where it's like, whoa, they're making fart jokes and it's a little crude and it's this high quality animation. And we were the perfect target audience. We grew up with it. And I watched Shrek again, maybe a year and a half ago. And it was amazing for me because there are so many things about that movie that when you watch it again as an adult, dude, it's pretty dirty. So that was like half the fun for me. But I'm not sure someone coming into it today as a man,
as a grown man,
I mean, my parents liked it when I was a kid, but it's one of those things where if you have to suffer through all these horrible kids movies, and then there's one that's like, oh, this has some good humor in it, then maybe you'll like it. But Chris, where are you at with this? Because I don't know. I'm leaning no, though.
I would feverishly recommend Shrek to anybody who hasn't seen it. Like I like Shrek 1 and 2 are so fucking good that I don't know, man. It depends on how much you care about, I guess, the history of animated movies, I guess, because there is something about that too, where it's just like this was a milestone for sure, for like a lot of reasons. But there's also like, I feel like even today it sticks out because you wouldn't normally see a movie directed at kids with the stuff that you see in those movies. Like the Shrek 2 scene where like it's like a old like medieval like version of like cops or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like they're grinding pepper in their eyes as they're taking dude, it's
dude,
so
and then he's getting away on the white Bronco.
Yeah, I don't know.
I never understood that when I was a kid until I was an adult.
Dude, I got that recently, like in the last like year or two, like when I was like, I can't believe this was in this movie. I don't know. I don't know if Colin will like it, but I think he'll appreciate him. Like I think there's enough there, especially in the second one, that they're just good movies. You don't have to go past 2, really. There's no real necessity for that. But
it is a big missing piece of my, my knowledge base, like of general culture. Like, that's how when I saw Avatar, I felt like I kind of like checked a major box. Where I was like, oh yeah, I never saw Avatar. Like, I feel like go ahead.
I think Shrek 1 and 2 will give you that feeling.
Okay.
Like you'll because there's no doubting the cultural, quite frankly, the baffling cultural impact of Shrek.
Well, the recent conversation around it, I don't know why I was looking into it or why I was reading about Shrek, but I think I have this right. Was it originally supposed to be Chris Farley? Or am I thinking
Chris Farley was originally, I think they actually recorded all of his line, or like most of, if not all of his lines for it. There's like animatics that you can see of, certain scenes with Chris Farley doing Shrek or whatever. And, he died. So they couldn't really do that. And they got Mike Myers instead, who I think kills it. I think everybody in that movie is like perfectly cast. Like both of them. Like Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots is hilarious still. It's good shit. Like, I don't know. Those first 2 movies they're nostalgic for me, sure. But I think even separating that from like the nostalgia, it's just such a big like chapter in like meme culture. I don't think you're ever probably going to see, or at least maybe not ever, but I don't think it's going to be a long time before we see a movie directed at kids with this level of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge that isn't like fourth wall breaking, you know what I mean? Like I feel like any kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge in movies now is like the character looks at the camera in like a Deadpool kind of way almost, and it's kind of like annoying. But this is just like, it's just cleverly written stuff. And Shrek 2, I would argue genuinely from like the bottom of my heart, is probably one of the, if not the best sequel to a movie I've probably ever seen. Like the first Shrek does not justify how good Shrek 2 is. I'll put it that way. Because Shrek 1 is good. It's like really good. It's like it's funny. But Shrek 2 is unreasonably good.
I think I will be open to checking that out because I don't know. I guess so. You said 2002, so I would have been like a senior in high school. So I guess somehow I was just like in a weird space. But it gives me. So first of all, the whole Chris Farley thing, I didn't know that. So I just didn't know that, which is so interesting because I think he's fucking hysterical.
Yeah.
But the other thing that it kind of gives context to with the Mike Myers connection is like, I've kind of wondered, he's interesting to me because he doesn't seem to do very much by choice. And at least that was kind of the way I looked at it with like Wayne's World and into like some of the stuff that happened in the 90s into Austin Powers, which I think is exceptional. Like I fucking love Austin Powers. I think those movies are awesome, especially the first one. And then in my mind, he just goes away. But really, like, he's more relevant than ever in this period of doing this massive cartoon hit, you know? And it's fun. Like, so it's just funny that like through my own prism, like I lost sight of that in some sense. What?
Chris said he was reborn. I was thinking about someone being reborn through Shrek.
Oh. Yeah. That's what happened with Mike Myers, really. Like that's kind of how I watched Austin Powers and I loved them I liked them when I was a kid. But Mike Myers was Shrek to me. Like that is what his relevancy was, because those movies were so big. And obviously the third and fourth one just didn't really matter. Third one was terrible. Like, avoid it. There's no real reason to watch the later ones, but 1 and 2 I argue still, they really slap.
It's all about like, yeah, it's funny that you feel that way. It's all about the perspective of it. I guess that's what I was saying is like, yeah, he's like, I don't need to do anything. I'm doing fucking Shrek, you know. And meanwhile, I'm like, where's another Austin Powers movie, asshole?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, he tried with the Love Guru, remember?
Yeah, the Love Guru, and he also did that weird like game show where he played like a different like a game show character. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it was like the commercial. I didn't even know originally that it was him because it was like dead up presented as if it was another person.
The Gong Show, right?
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Yeah. And it was like, oh, it's Mike Myers. Like, oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Actually, he's such a great actor. That's what I loved about Austin Powers so much. But anyway, Vinny, thank you for writing in. All right, guys, let's get into some game stuff here. We have a write-in from Anthony Vergucci. I thought this was a feel-good story, so I thought we would start with this. Hey, Colin and Chris, and welcome back, Dustin. Writing in to shout out an LSM viewer I encountered while boosting trophies on Doom Eternal. I met MUFC Adam 98 after he messaged me from a session post off of PSN profiles. We went back and forth and figured out we'd be doing something the upcoming weekend. This past Saturday, after I came home from a wedding, we got the ball rolling, and while I was waiting for him to set up a spare PS4 for the session, I was listening to episode 89 of Constellation, Stelly, he says, and like a respectable gent, I had it going through an open mic. Ugh. He heard apparently, and as we were getting started, asked if that was Micah he heard. It indeed was, and we hit the ground running as the 3-hour Doom Eternal multiplayer trophy boosting session began, and we got to know one another. We both finished everything we needed without issue and in one session. I think we both made a new pal along the way too. He's from jolly old England, and he's looking forward to hopefully a live show next year. So let me shout out Adam from the UK. Nice meeting you, mate, and good luck with the rest of Doom Eternal to secure that big, beautiful platinum trophy. Nice story. But let's not be doing things like that over the mic. Yeah.
Well, if he didn't do that, this probably wouldn't have happened. So it's kind of
it definitely wouldn't have. But still, just generally speaking, you know, I know that that's the flavor of the old Xbox Live and all the rest. And I think someone getting, you know, your parents arguing in the background, like it's all sorts of crazy shit going on. It was good, but
yeah,
interesting story. I'm glad you guys met each other and found each other, found love, as it were. Guys, Xtor wrote in and asked, hey, Sacred Men, how did the PSN outage affect you? I couldn't play Rainbow Six, the finals, and Helldivers. Also, how long did it take you to realize? It took me 15 minutes after searching online. Good day, much love. I realized pretty quickly because I was using my portal because I was watching football and was, you know, dicking around on the portals playing Kunitsugami. And I went to sync the trophies and it wasn't working. And then I went to upload my save and it wasn't working. So I was like, oh, okay. And then I put it down. And then after the game, I went on my PS5 and played Dead Rising and realized that the network was just down. So this was a pretty significant outage, actually. I was recently on Mystic Ryan's PlayStation podcast, and which was a great time. We were talking about the 2011 outage, and he was saying, and he has a really good mind for this stuff and really remembers a lot of these things in the seams, is like, this is actually like one of the most significant, if not the most significant outage that's happened since then, as far as like time off, like unplanned time offline. So did either of you guys run into any problems during this outage that had everyone sparked overnight?
Colin, just real quick about, you said you went to sync the trophies. Is that your version of saying bless you, that you're still doing it even though there's clearly no reason to?
Well, there is reason to.
Well, it just syncs on its own.
How does it do that? I mean, I still have to go. You have to interface with it. I don't go like click options and go sync trophies in the menu. I just like go and look at them. That way you have to go read them. Like if you earn trophies and never go and look at them, I don't think that they do go to the network.
I earned a trophy for Final Fantasy VI this morning. Let me see.
And there might be like a background update thing or something that happens, but I think that you have to do that.
Okay. Well, no, hold on. It's generating. Okay. Go to my profile now. Today is the 3rd of October. Yep. They're synced on PSN profiles.
To be clear, I'm not used to on PS3 and less so on PS4. You have to literally sync your trophies.
Right,
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like you would go like when I earn a trophy, I hit the PlayStation button and then I hit circle because I feel like it's like, okay, it sends it to, because I don't think it's scraping constantly. It might be doing it over periods of time. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just seems like we went from you're telling me we went from a situation where it would literally take us 15 minutes literally to sync trophies to where it just happens. I don't believe it.
It just did. I'm telling you right now. I have synced trophies on PSN profiles.
Maybe there's like a background process is what I'm saying that pings every so often or whatever.
Right.
I'd like to,
so
I don't
if
know.
it does
I don't
that,
know.
then you don't need
old
to sync
habits
it.
die hard. You could be right. You know,
You're still saying bless you.
Right. That's fair. That's a nice connection. It's like a sitcom. That's like sitcom writing. You know?
Yeah, it's like a callback.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
As far as the PSN outage, it did not affect me. I wasn't playing games at the time, but I did see it online. People were upset. And I think Xbox had an outage the next day, too. So they kind of happened back to back. I don't know if the Xbox One was quite as long, but I know there were some people that if you have game sharing set up, then you get locked out of your digital games. So some people were upset about that, but that's just, it's part of the deal.
That happened to me with Kinitsugami as well, because my portal is connected to my secondary PS5. But yeah, that's just kind of the price of doing business. Because like after the football games, when I went and played Dead Rising, that was on my normal PS5 and it was fine, even though it was a digital copy. So yeah, I had no issues with that at all.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a good. I said this to Ryan though, and Spawnwave, which I was like, this can't happen. Like this is. I was trying to look at it through the lens of a normal person, not like people with lots of flexibility that play lots of games or like have a lot of free time. Like imagine you worked all day and like, or this is like your one night off a week or like whatever it is. Like there are people that really got fucked by this, and I know that these things just happen, but it sucks. And the interconnectivity of everything and the reliance on these online games, obviously on an internet connection and all of the rest. And like we were saying, secondary consoles, like this no doubt screwed many people. And it's not like the end of the world for any of them. It's just like in the moment that sucks. And it's just the kind of thing that like I don't think should happen. Like maybe an hour or half an hour, but like literally I think it was like what, 8 or 10 hours or something like that. That's a long outage.
Yeah.
So I just feel like that's not acceptable. But it is also true that it just doesn't really happen so anymore. And there are so many people that don't even remember. Dude, the famous outage, the weeks long outage, is ancient history. Like a lot of people don't even know about that.
That shit was crazy, man. Like even at the time when I wasn't really necessarily paying that much attention to the space in the way that we do now, I remember thinking at that point, it's like, oh, it's over at this point, right? Like that felt like a death blow to me at the time.
It was bad. PS3s could be so finicky that I was afraid of playing like for prolonged periods of time on it without an internet connection to lose the trophies, because I had lost trophies in other situations where PS3s just died, which sucked. And so I remember not even playing anything for that entire time. Like I think I was playing like Civilization and like other random things, or maybe even Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the outage was unfortunate. I did notice it. Yeah, and it's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Dustin, about the licenses. I did notice that too, but that's just the price of doing business on digital storefronts. Like I don't know how you could undo that, really.
Right. Well, and if you don't have that set up, you can still access your digital games. I think that there's like a limit. Like if PlayStation Network was down for a week, then if you only had a digital game, I don't remember exactly what the timeline is, but it would be a shitty situation. But yeah, that's specifically for if you have multiple consoles set up on one account.
Yeah, and that's going to be obviously an edge case.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
No, it didn't affect it. I thought it was so funny because I was just like, oh, this is the one week that I don't have access to my PlayStation anyway. So I completely skipped it in some way.
It was a little frustrating just because I'm on the last boss of Kunitsugami and I couldn't get back into it, and I was like, eh. So that's the reason I really haven't beaten it yet. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, it was fine. But it is worth noting. What I would love, I don't think they're going to do this, and obviously they don't have to, but it would be interesting to know like what happened. Yeah. Like what went on. It's the same thing with PlayStation Stars and all these other things. Like what's going on? You know. All right. Guys, have you seen these Heavy Rain videos that have been going around? They're from Real Radic on Twitter, who I think is a listener of ours, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's a good boy.
And he's becoming somewhat prominent, it seems like, which is kind of cool, like a prominent power user, as it were, on social media, growing and has some of these viral things going around. So dude, he tweeted out these two videos here in early October. The first one is Heavy Rain becomes a way better game when you intentionally try to fail every QTE prompt. And it is a 2-minute video. It is so fucking funny. And then he tweeted, so Gene tweeted something about the videos or whatever, and then he quote tweeted him with another video that's like 1:15 long and it says, case in point, here's Ethan Mars being the most incompetent man in history and yet somehow still winning. These videos are comical, dude. Like, I don't know why people might have thought to do this in the past and people have been laughing about this, but I've never thought of this, nor have I ever seen it. Because for people that don't know, David Cage is all about no game over screens. Like, you can't lose, really, no matter what. You're going to keep going in the game. It's different things will happen. Your decisions and like your actions matter, but there are all these QTEs, and the QTEs are quite simple. Some of them aren't in certain situations in Heavy Rain, but generally speaking, you have plenty of time. Like the game definitely thinks you're going to be okay. But if you just fail them all, it becomes like a slapstick routine, and it's so good. So yeah, what do you guys think, Chris?
Dude, I have it playing. I'm excited. It is so. I'm watching the grocery store one right now. It's amazing. Like, because some of these failures, like if anybody's not familiar or if anybody's like unfamiliar with Heavy Rain, it's like it's all quick time events, and he's running through it. And if you fail, obviously, like you fail the QT events, like there's a different animation. But like some of these animations feels like he like there's one where he specifically like hugs a person.
Yeah,
basically, where it's just like. That's like beyond a fail. They clearly were like, how can we have this guy fail this? And it's like, there's no real way to do it. And so I just have him wrap his arms around this person.
I like
that's
how
like a reasonable consequence.
He slips on like, I don't know, there's like an apple or something. It's like almost like a cartoon when someone slips on a banana peel. He's like, oh, and
dude, it's funny because like going through it, it's like he trips over a person. Like, so there's like a chase sequence in the game. And so he trips over a person. He gets hit by a car. And then I'm just scrolling through it. He like trips over more people. He runs into a bunch of people waiting to get flowers and knocks them over. Runs into a stack of boxes, knocks them over. Runs into a dude with another set of boxes, runs them over. Trips over a bunch of fruit, and then jumps onto the counter.
He belly flops onto the counter for no reason.
Yeah, shout out to these videos. These videos are fucking awesome.
Yeah, they're great.
Radic rules.
Stooges.
He is. Dude, I said this in our Discord the other day. This is like witnessing Leonardo da Vinci paint the Mona Lisa. This man is at his prime when it comes to not only tweets like this, but also some really great troll tweets that I think we've discussed on the show before. So
how can we work with him? We should work with him in some way. Do something funny with him.
Yeah, I'm down.
Dude, the other video is him being chased by the guy with the shotgun. And just getting fucking obliterated by this dude over and over again. Because the game is giving you so much time to respond. Like, you're really not supposed to fail, a lot of these things. You can. Oh, it's so good.
Funny.
I don't know
So
why.
good.
Like, God, it's like those are one of the things where I wish I thought of that. That's so funny. Yeah, good shit. Well done. You got to get into Beyond Two Souls and Detroit. I would love to see Beyond, like what would happen in that game if you don't do anything.
Dude, the scene with the chickens is crazy.
Oh, dude, when you get like what is that?
What kind of store is this?
I don't know.
It's such a crazy, like, there's a guy like walking like with like a flower pot, and he's like, I'm delivering the flowers to the meat section. And it's just like, it's like there's no thought at all into the layout of this place. It's amazing. I love it.
Real Radic, keep it up.
Yeah,
you're doing great work out there. All right, let's talk about the 30th anniversary shopping situation, the PlayStation 5 Pro shopping situation. I want to know how it went for everyone. Tyler Roseberry wrote in on Patreon and says, "Hello, sacred gentlemen. I wanted to hear your thoughts on how the 30th anniversary pre-orders were handled. I had no real hopes of obtaining the Pro bundle, but I thought for sure I'd be able to get my hands on that sweet DualShock, but unfortunately I was unable to get anything. Do you guys think Sony could have handled this a bit better? Maybe they should have anticipated more demand. It seems awfully reminiscent of trying to buy a PS5 in 2020. I'll keep my hopes up that something becomes available in the near future, but for now I'll hang up and listen. Thanks, boys." So my confusion about this, and it especially was magnified the day of, where I was like, why are we selling, or why is Sony selling the 30th anniversary stuff and the PS5 Pro at the same time? Like, what was the decision behind, what's the rationale behind that? Even the marketing rationale doesn't even make any sense. Wouldn't you want to have like two beats? But so like everyone's crowding the PlayStation store. Most people don't want what a lot of the most hardcore fans do want, which is the Pro, which meanwhile isn't supply constrained, but is made to be, is seemed supply constrained in the moment where people gave up, because it's like everyone wants the controller or the Portal or obviously the PS5 special edition and all that, and there's a limited number of them. I just don't know why they did that. That's my major takeaway, and it frustrated the shit out of me. So I will say that, but let's go around the horn and see what everyone got, if anything, that day. So I got up at 9:45 that day because it started at 10. I just rolled in and I just opened a window on the PlayStation Direct store, and I was put into the queue, and it was like I was like over an hour back or whatever, which I could accept. I was like, okay, fine. It was apparently randomized. Apparently didn't matter if you were there early. I don't know if it did or not, but I believe that it didn't. So I waited around for a while to see if anything would happen, but like for 20 minutes or so, and nothing did. I was following Wario64 on Twitter, and he tweeted out Walmart links to the controller. And I was like, well, I definitely want the controller. So I went and bought the controller on Walmart, the 30th anniversary controller. And hopefully like it actually goes through ultimately in there. It's not one of these things where it's like, oh, can't honor your pre-order. But I've not encountered those issues very much personally. I know a lot of people have, though, with various games and pieces of hardware. And then I just was like, I'm going back to bed. I'm not waiting here. So then I just kind of, I was bummed, but I accepted. I'm like, I'm not going to, from my perspective at that point, I was like, I'm not going to get a Pro, obviously. So I'll wait for the retailers to sell them, and I'll try again, because I've had pretty good luck with Amazon and Walmart buying things that I've needed as they've come out, PS5s and shit. Remember, like I somehow pre-ordered, like organically pre-ordered like 3 PS5s. Yeah, just by being ready at the right time, and I used them all. I mean, I needed them all. It wasn't like I was scalping them or anything like that. I gave one to my brother, and I have 2 of them still to this day. But so I went back to bed. Micah woke me up at 1 and was like, pros are still available. And I was like, oh, really? So I got up and I went back on PlayStation Direct, and on my browser, it was a page, like a static page with no links on it or whatever, where it was like, your time has elapsed. You were picked at this time, or you entered the queue at this time. Your time to shop was at this time. The time ended at this time. And I couldn't get it to go, like so I had to open an incognito window. Thankfully, I was able to just log in incognito, and I ordered the Pro console through PlayStation Direct. And then lo and behold, the Pro doesn't seem supply constrained at all. We'll get into that in a moment. So I ended up getting the controller and my basic Pro. I didn't have an opportunity to get the Portal. I think that's probably for the best. So I'm really not upset about that at all. Mm-hmm. So I got exactly what I wanted. It all worked out. It was great. Dustin, where are you? What did you get? How was your experience? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, so it definitely was random. And I had experience with this from getting tickets to the Studio Ghibli Museum, where it's also randomized. Doesn't matter when you open the link, it spits you, as long as you're there when the line begins, it'll spit you in a random spot. So I had my account open on my PC, my MacBook, my iPad, Holly's iPad, and my phone because I knew one of them, it was going to spit them all out randomly. And so most of them were the waiting like beyond an hour, but my phone was slightly less than an hour. I think it was 50 minutes or something like that. And by the time I got in, the bundle, of course, was gone. And even Ben, shout out Ben, was trying to help me get this Pro bundle. Also not successful, even though he was in about 15 minutes before I was. So I pre-ordered the PS5 Pro and the DualSense Edge. And because I saw it early and I knew maybe I would want it or someone else, I also got the Walmart controller of the standard DualSense. So I was bummed because I really wanted the anniversary bundle, but you know, you can't win them all. They made so few of them that it just felt impossible. Later that day, a listener reached out to me saying, hey, I got in early. I was planning to get the PS5 Pro. I saw the bundle. I impulse bought it. And I've been thinking over it throughout the day. I don't need it. I don't need to spend the money on this. Would you like the pre-order for cost? I was like, only if you are absolutely sure that you don't want it, I will take it. So shout out to this gentleman. I can't remember what his name is. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I should keep it a secret. But yeah, he helped me out. And so at some point, I'm going to have to give someone I don't really know $1,000. But he's been in our Discord for a long time. We've met him at 2 of our different live shows.
Oh, yeah, he's not gonna
he's not gonna scam me. I feel good about it. But so Chris, I offered him the DualSense Edge that I have pre-ordered. He's gonna take that. Yeah. And then Ben is gonna take my other controller. And I guess I just should cancel my pre-order of my standard PS5 Pro because it's not supply constrained.
This is like a complicated 3-way trade in baseball or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I think as far as, because some people were upset about the randomness of the draw, but I don't really know. There were, even if everybody reloaded at the same time, first of all, would way overload PlayStation Direct. I think they had to figure out the system to let people in to the store. I assume, I'm not a web developer, but I assume that's some kind of thing where they can kind of hold people so it doesn't like DDoS the store, basically. But I don't really, I mean, I think there's a write-in about this later, so I don't want to step on it too much, but they do have other methods of doing it that depend on how much time you've spent on PSN. I know they did that in Japan. Maybe that would have been a better option. A lot of people assume that all of these went to scalpers, and I'm sure a significant amount of them did, but the scalper had to be just as lucky as you to get it. There's no,
Here's the, well, I have thoughts on this. We'll get into all this because we have more inquiries too. I want to get into the different angles of this, but let's get Chris on the record first. How did it go for you, Chris? What was your experience like?
I mean, I remember waking up around like 9 or like 9:15. I remember opening up like a window and trying to get in. I felt pretty good about it actually, because like once it got to the queue, it said like, okay, your wait time is like 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, cool. All right, maybe I might have a shot. But like, I think like within seconds that bundle like vanished. So I was like, okay, I'm in the queue already. Like, whatever. I'll just get my Pro because I felt pretty good about the timing, although I guess it didn't matter because there was no real supply constraint on the Pro. But in the moment, I was just like, 30 minutes. Okay, fine. I'll just get the normal Pro. No big deal. Dustin obviously reached out about the Edge, and I was like, yeah, I'll take that, dude. And I think another listener reached out like, hey, I could send you the normal DualSense, the anniversary DualSense for some, for the same price. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. I would have loved to get that bundle. I'm a little bit frustrated with the way that they did do it. Like, I kind of agree with you, Colin, where it's like doing that at once or at the same time, I think was like very, like, not a good call. And I would have liked it if they showed a little bit of, I don't know, like with the bundle specifically, that is such a celebratory item that I feel like having some kind of prerequisite where it's like you have to have, I don't know, this long of an account history or like this many hours on PSN in some way, shape, or form to even get into the queue. I feel like that would have felt at least a little bit more authentic, because at least in that situation, if a scalper did get through, it's at least a scalper with history with PlayStation. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, at the very least, because if you're just a new PlayStation, or if, let's say you've been on Xbox or Nintendo the whole time, and you see this as an opportunity to jump in on a new PS5, you don't give a shit about the 30th anniversary bundle. You don't give a shit about that gray. You don't give a shit about really any of it, because you're new and it doesn't affect you. And so, like, I do wish that they had some kind of a limit as to who could even get in the queue for that item specifically, because at least if I were to lose out on it, I felt that I would have at least lost out on it to people who in all likelihood do actually care to get it, as opposed to the way they did do it, which was kind of like an open season luck of the draw random, where there's probably people with no PlayStation history at all, in all likelihood plenty, who got their hands on this thing.
All you needed was a PSN ID, which anyone can make. So
yeah, it's so that I think is a little lame. Would have loved to get that bundle, but I'm fine with just a PS5 Pro, and that controller's beautiful. That was really the main thing. It's like I really, because realistically, you could just, if you really want to get crazy with it, you could just like paint that shell if you really wanted it. But that controller with like the colored buttons and the gray, and like, that's beautiful. And so I'm excited to get my hands on those when the time comes. But yeah, a bit of a rocky experience, honestly.
yeah, well, let's get further into this. Not Diddy wrote in, thank God.
Oh yeah.
That, hey, oiled up men, which do you think is the better option? First come, first serve, or a raffle or lottery system? As you know, last week the PS5 Pro Anniversary Edition went up for pre-order. The Japanese pre-orders went live on September 30th, and it wasn't first come, first serve. This is what Dustin noted. No queues, no server overloads. Instead, you just register your Japanese PSN and are put into a lottery. Not only that, you must have at least 30 hours on your Japanese PSN account. Should Sony always use this approach with pre-ordering things from PS Direct? I think that 30 hours is a little too generous for something like the Anniversary Edition PS5 Pro. Appreciate everything you do. I agree with you there, actually. Like, so the Japan thing is interesting. My theory on this is that they were testing what will ultimately roll out worldwide, and testing it in a, their home market and in a smaller market where they can manage things better, to see like, how can we manage this, and can we deploy things that might work globally to go through the strata of PSN users to select the people that really, frankly, deserve first access to our products. I agree with you, not Diddy, in the sense that it's like, really, it should be based on PlayStation Stars, because that's really indicative of how much money you spend on PSN. And you look at things like this and it's like, that should just be like only level 4 PSN Star, like PlayStation Stars people. Like, at the very least. People are like, what about trophies and this and that? I'm like, yeah, trophies are interesting too if you weighted it, in some sense, because it's like, who gives a shit if you have 1,000 platinum trophies if you have all of this shovelware stuff? So I don't really like the trophy thing. I like more of like the time played, which is like a back end thing, plus like money spent and like interactivity. I'm sorry, with the PlayStation Store, which PlayStation Stars would really represent probably best. I mean, you can get some things on PS Stars by doing all the little tasks, but you're getting a lot of money and points by buying things. And so I just feel like that would make the most sense. It's true that like you would still get scalpers, and we're going to talk about scalping in a little while. But at least it would be like you said, like the most connected PlayStation people would just have, it would obviously weight it towards people that really maybe should have first access to it. And
right.
So I would like to see them do something like that. But really, none of this would have, I don't want to say none of this would have happened, but it wouldn't have been, I don't think, so dramatic if you didn't have two groups of people going for two different things at the same time. Some people wanted, I guess like the argument could be like, because we're selling a Pro, like a limited edition Pro model or whatever, we want to give you access to it at the same time so you can make that decision, and you don't know if you're going to get one if you don't get the other, and so on and so forth. And so we want to give you the decision at the same time. But it's like, I just don't think that's adequate, because it created so many problems. So it should have just been staggered, in my opinion.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
The thing for me, it's like, I think you could have made the at the same time thing work if you just had that, again, that criteria for getting in for that machine. You know what I mean? Like if let's say, all right, they're both at the same time, or they're both available for pre-order, and then you have the anniversary edition, and then you have the normal base PS5 Pro. If you go to then add the PS5 Pro 30th anniversary edition, it'll then run through a check. You know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, can you actually do this? If the answer is no, then go get the PS5. You're already in the queue. You're already in the store. Get your base PS5. But I do think, like, yeah, man, I don't know, man. I think the nature of what this is, if it's like, I don't know, if it's something that's more specific, it's like a special Spider-Man PS5. Like, who the fuck cares? You know, like there's plenty of people who probably like, oh yeah, I want a Spider-Man PlayStation 5. Like there's something about an anniversary edition that feels a little bit more, that you should treat that with a little bit more weight to me. Because it is a celebration of the history, and if the people who don't have a intimate connection with that history are getting equivalent first access with such a limited pool, it just feels a little dirty. I don't know.
I have an idea. How about make more than 12,000 of them?
That would be nice as well.
Yeah, I don't. I want to. Let me speak on this, because what I'm curious about is if they made the wrong thing scarce. Like, I do like the idea of making something that they're doing scarce, right? Like, and the number equivalent to the December release date in Japan and all of that, whatever it is, 12,000, 10, whatever it is, 12,100 or whatever. I just, maybe it shouldn't have been the console that was scarce, but something else, some collectible, I don't know, but I do respect that they do it from the perspective of, you definitely can't say they're worried about money here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there is something interesting about it from that perspective of, like, they know they could probably sell hundreds of thousands of them, and they can make a lot of money doing it, but they're like, no, we just want to do this. And I do respect that, because it's kind of, it's unintuitive from a commercial standpoint to do that. The thing I will say, though, Dustin, is that I think that they should have just made plentiful controller. Like, the controller should just join the family of controllers. It shouldn't be a scarce thing. Like, there should be a way to access a 30th anniversary celebratory item with no scarcity. And it should have been the controller.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, why does that have to be scarce? That doesn't even make any sense. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that just the number being, so it's 12,300 for the date, of course. I think you could do, I don't know, 30,000 for the 30th anniversary. So you times the number by almost 3. And that way there's a bigger pool, because clearly there's that many people to be interested. But I guess there's a possibility too, if they did 30, there'd still be a lot of people complaining that they weren't able to get them, I would assume. But
yeah,
I just, it sucks that a lot of people wanted this and they made it the nostalgia grab, and there are more people disappointed than happy right now. And I think that's unfortunate. I'm with you that I think limited things are cool to some degree, but when you make it something that's this desirable and then you make most people not be able to have it, I think that sucks. It feels like this whole bundle is more of a marketing opportunity than a way to celebrate something. Maybe. And I get it. They're a giant corporation. Of course, it's a marketing opportunity, but it just sucks for not everyone is on a podcast that can have someone reach out to them. It's a very, very blessed situation that I'm in that happened. And so I feel bad, because there was a point in that day where I was like, well, this sucks, because I really wanted that. And I know you can't have everything you want in life. Of course, I understand that. But it wasn't a matter of like the money or being there on time. I checked all the boxes to try to get it, but it was like, nope, can't do it.
Yeah, they have to figure out a better way to sift through people. And yeah, you're right. I mean, there's such an opportunity cost by not selling more consoles that it clearly is looked at it probably internally as just marketing. In fact, with fabricating all that stuff and designing it and all that, they're probably like, oh, we just like broke even. Yeah. But like everyone's talking about the Pro and the 30th anniversary stuff. So I don't know how I feel about having something being limited. I just think that something about it shouldn't be, because it's just not, I don't want this. Fairness is not it's not the right word. It's just, it's not equitable, for like your fan base to have a little bit of time and access to something like, and like make as many as you can of that thing, whatever it might be. So that's how I feel about it.
What would you think, Colin, about this? I don't know if this would work on a console manufacturing scale, but there are companies, I think Limited Run does this, another maybe IM8-bit, some other boutique gaming stuff manufacturer. They just do open pre-orders where you must pre-order between this time frame, like this week. If you pre-order, we are going to make that many.
Mm-hmm.
So if PlayStation did that for this, it would remove it's the date, 12,300. It would remove that element, but it would make it so it's like, you got to be here to get this. If you are here to get it, you will get it.
Yeah.
But if you are too late, then you don't get it, or you have to buy it from someone else.
It's like HasLab, the Hasbro's like Kickstarter style thing where they put up like really cool, expensive toys and then people support them and anyone can get in. And you can even buy like up to 5 of them or whatever if you want to. So like, and it gets crazy over there. So yeah, I do like something like that. I think that would be cool. That way everyone has an opportunity. It's just, I don't know. I know they're in between a rock and a hard place of like, well, the less scarce this is, I guess the less special it is. And I'm like, yeah, but why does the specialness about it have to be its scarcity? Unless it's just a collector's item for the sake of being a collector's item. And I will say this, dude, I don't know if you guys remember this. This is a little piece of deep PlayStation lore, but when PS4 20th anniversary was put on sale, it was during PSX, and they launched it like in the wake of their press conference or whatever it was. And everyone was in this. So the most hardcore PlayStation audience in the world, or many of them, were in this space where their internet really wasn't working and where like there was no communication with the outside world and all that kind of stuff. And so it was ironic because no one that was there got a PS4 20th anniversary edition because of that, even though they're the most hardcore fan base because they're at the PlayStation experience. So it doesn't seem to ever really go quite right.
Right.
Yeah.
Ed H wrote in, said, "Hey, CDC. At the time of writing, PS5 Pro consoles are still available for pre-order in the UK from PlayStation Direct. I think they're still available here in the US as well. Dustin, you want to look for that? However, when the pre-orders went live last week, I and many others had to sit in an online queue for hours to ensure we got ours pre-ordered. However, there have been points in the last week when the Pro was briefly unavailable for pre-order. Cue online conspiracies about how Sony is creating a sense of artificial scarcity to drive demand and prices. This is silly nonsense. What this pattern indicates is that Sony has a ton of these things sitting in a warehouse somewhere and is making allocations of batches to each region as the pre-orders come in so that can most efficiently match supply to the regional demand. Unless I am missing something. What do you make of the PS5 Pro's launch, and what does it tell you about the console? All the best to everyone at Last Stand. Thanks for all the great content." So yeah, are they still available? I think they are still available in the US.
They are.
So I was talking about this with Mystic Ryan, and he brought up an interesting point, which I didn't really remember. And again, this is where like his memory just goes into the seams, and it's so interesting. It's like PS4 Pro didn't sell out. It wasn't hard to find until after it came out, and then it got all fucked up. Now, that's interesting, but I still think that PS5 Pro is just a sticker shock situation because unlike, or at least that's what's driving some of it, because unlike the PS4 Pro was placed into the PS4's price, slot, and the PS4 was dropped. So there was no sticker shock. In fact, you felt like you were getting something valuable. And obviously it was not until it hit market that people really started to believe more in it, and it became harder to find. So with the PS5 Pro, I am a little surprised that it's still accessible. But, and again, Ryan made the good point where it was like, Sony is not trying to undersell any consoles. I think they definitely know this from the PS5 experience when they couldn't make as much. They can only make so many of them, and they can sell everyone they're making immediately, and all the rest. They don't want to be sold out. So it's not like you can't really read too much into it, but we really won't know one way or the other because we have no idea what their supply is. I mean, they could be sitting on a shit ton of these things and be really nervous right now because they're not selling. But anecdotally, from people in our community, from what I've been reading around the internet, it seems like a lot of people have pre-ordered PS5 Pro. And so they just might have enough to go around, which is nice and very different from the core PS5 for the first 2 years or so. So, Dustin, What do you make of the PS5 Pro's availability? Do you think it bodes poorly for the console? Do you think it's sticker shock? Do you think, where's your mind on this?
I think the PS5 Pro is even still a harder sell right now than PS4 Pro, because at the time PS4 Pro was a move because people were en masse upgrading to 4K TVs, and so their PS4 doesn't do 4K, and so the PS4 Pro, like, hey, you got this 4K TV, and now we have an option for you that you can upgrade your PlayStation and have one that does 4K output. Whereas with PS5 Pro, they are selling on the performance graphics, things like that. And this comes back to last week when we were talking about it, that I still think that Sony did overall a pretty abysmal job selling this thing in that Mark Cerny presentation. That a lot of people saw that and were like, I don't know if I need that. And I think that it could be a situation like you said, Colin, where if PS5 Pro comes out and users get their hands on it and they're like, wow, this is a meaningful difference for people that care, and I love it. And they, reviews come out, Digital Foundry does all their stuff, things like that, or they see a friend that has one. I think that if at that point that the value, I guess not value, but its worth is proven, then we could see some more orders pick up. Will it sell out at that point? I don't know. But I just think that at this point, a lot of people are still on the fence about this thing. And I don't blame them. We had a slight conversation about this last week, but it's proven even further now that Digital Foundry has done a better job selling this thing than Sony has. Digital Foundry has a great video out detailing all these games and what their pro upgrades are, whether it's, resolution, ray tracing, frame rate, stuff like that. Tons of different games. And from seeing that alone, I was already in, but it really solidified that I think this thing is going to be pretty awesome for people like us who care about having that performance with the fidelity at the same time. It still could come out and we could be disappointed. We don't know yet. But I'm very curious to see once it's out and people on YouTube, whatever, are talking about it, if people are going to say, oh, or a game like Grand Theft Auto. Not saying it's going to be 60 FPS, but there's not really a solid game that's being sold with this thing yet that's like, oh, you're going to want to have the Pro for this. Maybe Ghost of Tsushima 2, whatever it's called, I already forgot. When that comes out, maybe when that comes out, people will be like, oh, that will be the point I get the Pro. But for now, I don't know.
Yeah. Chris, do you have anything you want to add about the PS5 Pro or its availability or scarcity before we move on to the final inquiry?
No, I feel like we covered most of everything. I think I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think the fact that they're as available as they are, or seemingly as available as they are, is like, I think bodes well for them. I don't think like a PS4 Pro or like a PS5 situation is ahead of us, I guess. I feel like everybody who wants one is going to be able to get one, generally speaking, with very, very few exceptions. And I think that's good. They learned something, I guess. Or maybe it's just, that supply chains have like loosened up a little bit or whatever have you. I think I'm not super worried about it. I'm actually kind of excited. Like, I wasn't really excited to get this thing. I was just kind of like, it's cool. Like, I like new hardware. I like opening a box and having a shiny new electronic, even if it's going to be kind of more or less the same thing. But that Digital Foundry video did a lot to kind of get me actually excited to have this thing in my house, because I'm just like, oh yeah, I actually see what they're talking about. And yeah, I think my opinions remain unchanged from that first time that we talked about it, which was that, yeah, the Mark Cerny presentation was just not good. Just not a good presentation at all.
No, it wasn't. And I think I'm so hypnotized by him, to be perfectly honest, that where you don't realize it in the moment. You're just kind of staring at him, and he can be talking to you about anything. And then you realize, like, wait, he didn't say anything. Oh my God, that man, that huckster didn't say anything.
Certain people are like that, man. Like, certain people have inherent charisma or likability. Todd Howard's like that. It's like, even though Todd Howard has been like at the helm of like a lot of things that have disappointed me, every time he's on stage, I'm like, that's a nice jacket.
Oh, the leather jacket, dude.
Yeah.
I trust you for some, like, I trust you again.
Yeah, again.
Somehow.
All right. We have one final thing to say. But by the way, about PS5 Pro, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited for it. I want to see what it's all about, and we'll have more to say about it when it comes. As far as why it might be still available, I I think sticker shock plays a big part in it. I think it's inaccessible to a lot of people, and I don't think Sony has like crazy expectations for it because they know how the PS4 Pro did. And so I think that everything's probably just fine. And they probably are allocating resources in real time, you imagine. We have X amount, we want to sell them ourselves. By the time we get to our retail partners, we'll give you whatever's left. I mean, that in some way makes some sense. But anyway.
Yeah.
Movie Guy 34 wrote in. I'll be very curious to see what you guys think of this. Says, well, folks, I'm here for some much needed guidance. I actually signed up for Patreon so I could ask for your help. I, like many, assuming I would not be able to get the 30th Anniversary Pro bundle, but much to my surprise, I set my alarm for 6:30 a.m., got in the virtual queue, and awaited my turn. I was a bit apprehensive about spending $700 for the Pro, but was excited. Lo and behold, when I was put through to PlayStation Direct, the Anniversary bundle was there and available. I purchased it and sat back in shock and joy, but now I'm faced with a dilemma. It was way more than I planned to spend, and they are, of course, being sold for almost $5,000 on eBay right now. I'm a father of 2 kids, and we do okay, but there is no doubt $5,000 would go a long way for me and my family. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that I was lucky enough to get one, and I have missed out on other things in the past and been frustrated at scalpers. I just don't know what to do. Should I sell and put the money to good use? Keep it and enjoy the nostalgia? Should I maybe hold on to it unboxed for years and sell it later? Could really use some advice. Thanks. Ooh, interesting. What do you think, Dustin? What should Movie Guy 34 do?
I think it really depends on the more nitty gritty of your financial situation, right? Because, well, he says, what does he say here? $5,000 on eBay. They do okay, but $5,000 would go a long way. Well, certainly $5,000 is going to go a long way for anybody. But I personally think when I buy some, or I have a game, like an old game that maybe I've held on to, and then it's worth a lot more, I think about personal value, right? That's something you got to keep into account as well. I guess as far as if you are deciding on the moral level, like, is it okay for you to scalp it? I would say it's okay, and here's why. Scalpers, for the most part, are people that's their job. Their business is to go and get things that are limited and sell them to people that want them. And so they take one of those out of the pool simply to just sell it. Now, it is tough with this one because it's so incredibly limited, but it wasn't your intention to go and sell it. But now you have this asset. I don't know. It's tough. This is really a tough one. I would say if the personal value to is high and $5,000, sure, it goes a long way for everybody, but you're not going to not eat without it. Keep it for you. Enjoy it. But I wouldn't feel too bad about selling it if it's not your shtick, right?
What do you think, Chris?
I'll give you 1,500. No, I think yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. If I will say they're starting to crack down now. I think I saw something earlier. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, I have a story here actually, and I forgot to even get into. And PlayStationLifestyle.net reports that 30th anniversary scalpers are being mass reported to eBay, and it's working. And like people's shit are getting taken down for it. Yeah,
so you might not necessarily be able to get it for as much as you want, or at least like through the easy way. I'm sure you could like Craigslist or like other means. There's never going to be too big of a barrier in your way to sell something for an egregious amount of money. You know.
By the way, it's only being taken down. They're only being taken down because they're pre-orders. Like once you have the PS5 Pro in hand, you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, man. I think it's do I think it's a little do I think it's a little shitty? Maybe. But at the same time, it's like, dude, money's money, you know, and you got to look after your own first. Like who cares really ultimately like what the hypothetical stranger feels about like what you're doing in this kind of situation where you have an asset that is now a lot more valuable than the money that you put in. Like I don't know. I don't think there's a moral sin being committed here necessarily.
Yeah.
But I would also not talk about it. Like I wouldn't necessarily brag about it or like, you know what I mean? It's just like one of those things, like keep it on the down low, I guess.
to me, and this, I think what I'm learning listening to you guys, and I think I feel the same way, is like the way we approach this stuff is somewhat arbitrary because it's really about like a feel, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And the way I kind of like try to analyze it more like brass tacks is, I think that if it's not, if it, it's like a luxury good, right? So it's like everyone, in my opinion, has the right to access one of them and do with it what they want. You know, like
Right.
scalping to me is the idea of like, by virtue of planning and access to maybe even multiple people and all these different things, you're kind of gathering items to sell en masse, like the people that had many PS5s, right? As opposed to the person who just bought a PS5 was not going to buy a PS5 otherwise and then just sold it for profit and didn't make like a thing of it. I guess I have a hard time getting too upset about one-offs because I just don't like where it leads. Like, so you have control over how I spend my money, how I choose to, like, it's the market.
Right.
You know what the best way to stop scalping, like to kill scalping, would be is for people to stop buying from scalpers. But like the
Right.
market demands things just like in an antique market, you know, like people flip things and people flip houses and people do all sorts of things. And I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's not something I've ever done. And I've also never bought a scalped item before. So I've never participated in either sense.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I mean, the closest thing I can think of is like when I've gone to random Jets games or Islanders games or something, and I've gone to StubHub and I've waited a long time and the game is meaningful and I'm paying a surplus to get the person's ticket. I'm definitely not paying the price of the ticket, but that's the market because someone else will. And I'm like, okay. So I just,
Yeah.
again, the reason I don't get too upset about it is because I don't like all the different tendrils and where they lead. What I don't want people to do and what I think is wrong is buying shit en masse or as part of an organization or like some procedural thing that you do where you're like, when PS5 is up, I'm going to go on 7 different outlets and I'm going to buy as many of them as possible. And then I'm going to sell them all. It's like, that's egregious to me. But saying like, I'm going to just go on Walmart and buy a PS5 Pro or a PS5 and then just sell it. It's like, still not ideal, but I don't really want to judge you for that. So in my opinion,
Right.
do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you end up getting that much money, I mean, it's a lot of money, dude. And I'm not so sure that's your problem, right? Like someone wants it that bad. And that's capitalism, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck to you, movie guy 34. All right. Let's get into some other smaller news items here. Did we see the trailer for HBO's The Last of Us Season 2, which returns to HBO in 2025? It's about 2 minutes long. Any thoughts on this, Dustin, that you want to share?
Yeah, I watched this the day that it came out and looks good. Looks to be of quality like the last season. Very curious about where it's going to start, what they're going to go over. I'm excited, though. I'm very excited in particular for my family, particularly my parents that are very invested in season 1 and know nothing about The Last of Us Part 2. So that'll be a treat to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, no, it looks great. It's nice to see. I don't know. It's cool to see like adaptations that just borrow stuff straight from the game. Like there's like just shot for shot, like certain sets, certain towns. It's just like that looks. You're nailing it. You know. I think the only issue that I have really is that like, I do think, what's the actress that plays Ellie?
Bella Ramsey?
Yeah, Bella Ramsey. That's right. She's in some
Yeah.
commercials recently too. Yeah, go on.
I think her casting was probably a good idea for the first season, but like I think now that she's supposed to be a lot older, it doesn't really read as well. Like she still looks very young, even though like a large amount of time is supposed to have, or not, maybe not a large amount of time, enough time is supposed to have passed at this point. So it's like there might be a little bit of an issue there. But aside from that, that's really nitpicky. You know what I mean? Ultimately, like these are actors; these aren't really these people anyway. So, you know, that's fine. I think it looks good. I'm excited for the reactions.
Yeah, me too. I want to know like what they're gonna really do.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I have no idea. Obviously, like that, well, we have it here actually from Tony Francis. on Patreon. It says, hey, Sacred Crew, first time subscriber here. I was wondering if you guys had any theories on how The Last of Us Season 2 will play out. I think Craig Mazin stated their intentions to split the story of the second game into 2, if not 3 seasons. I'd be interested to see how they adapt the timeline. Thanks again and keep up the awesome work. I mean, as we've discussed in the past, they do have intentions, I think, of like including things that weren't able to be included in the game, these ideas and arcs. But part of me would love to see people's reactions should they just lean into what happens in the game. And not saying to not, and they're not that they're not going to stretch it out over multiple seasons, but rather that still they stretch it out over multiple seasons, but that still happens in the beginning, you know, and we'll see. If I were betting on it, I would doubt that they're going to do it this season. Like, it just feels like exploring more of that time in the interstitial will make more sense. And then maybe you do it even at the end of the second season, if not the beginning of the third season or something like that. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm inclined to agree, but I also feel like television is also famously kind of non-linear. Like, there's always like episodes of TV shows where it's just like it starts and it's like 2002, and it's like okay, I guess we're here. Like, that's something I've noticed in a lot of like some of the biggest television shows. So in some way, it actually makes like certain non-linear paths and story sections in the game might actually make sense to be thrown in the same order on TV, maybe more so than in a game, actually. But yeah, I think what's most exciting about this is that we don't really know. It's kind of up in the air as to like how they're going to interpret this, how they're going to stretch it out, what they're going to do, how they're going to structure it, how they're going to organize it, what's going to change. Pretty exciting, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's what I get excited about too, specifically with the possibility of doing a spin-off game that explores the 20 years before The Last of Us.
Yeah.
And not all of it, but somewhere in it with Joel.
Like the beginning.
Yeah, because like we meet Joel 20 years after, when we see it just fast forwards and there's nothing in that space in terms of plot. Yeah. So it would be cool to like go back to 5 years after or 10 years after, and continue to kind of go down that road. Because I think that's where that's kind of where it's most rich, especially if you care a great deal in a negative way about what happens in The Last of Us Part 2, then that's kind of the happy space for you. And I actually think Naughty Dog stumbled upon, if not it was always the intention, stumbled upon kind of a way to make everyone happy, which is like, oh, we'll just make more Last of Us games then, because we'll continue like and finish Ellie's story, and then we'll go back. And we have 20 years of shit that we can tell you. So yeah, I think it actually works out pretty well for everyone.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I hope that they rip the Band-Aid off episode 1, because if not, everyone is just going to be, everyone who knows is going to be the meme, the Vane Kid meme with their friends. That's going to be me with my parents. Rip the Band-Aid off and then do what Chris is saying, the non-linear approach. Then they can dive into stuff that maybe between game 1 and game 2, but explore that without, because dude, the spoilers for people that don't know is going to be impossible. In fact, it's already practically impossible. I mean, we're being careful here just because we have some fucking respect on this show, but just, rip the Band-Aid off. That way you can just watch in peace. I guess maybe not peace, but
Gene and Jaffe aren't here to blurt out entire spoilers.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, how about a few more items of news here? I think I saw you tweet about this, Dustin, but I could be wrong. Over at Video Games Chronicle, our friend Jordan Middler writes, PlayStation raises Horizon Zero Dawn's PS4 price following remaster upgrade announcement. So according to them and the PS Prices website, Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition was $19.99 for more than 2 years and has been increased to $39.99. A few people wrote into me about this before it was reported too. It was reported pretty quickly because other people were talking about it, of course, but I kind of shrugged it off because I was like, oh, of course. To me, it was like, yeah, naturally. I mean, here are my thoughts on this is that I don't look at prices as being permanent in terms of like, especially with digital media, it seems like they just fluctuate and vacillate on a constant basis. Like and sometimes you just kind of make a bet, right? I bought Persona 3 Reload a couple of days ago because it was $41. And I'm like, I doubt it's going to be cheaper than that for a long time. You know, so and I think it's normally 60 or 70 or something like that. So I bought it and I made that bet. But Horizon has been exposed, Zero Dawn has been exposed to people for so long at that price. And it was also on PlayStation Plus for a while. And it was given, I think, as part of the stay-at-home initiative. So a ton of people got that, and they'll be able to use that version to upgrade. It's like, you had all of this exposure to it at a cheaper price. Why are you mad at it now? You didn't want it that badly. And now you want it, and that's cool. But that comes along with like the vacillation in price. That's just the way it works. So I think there's a lot of things to be upset about, but I don't think this is one of them. It's too easy to take advantage of it. It's almost unfair to people that bought it the right way, or not the right way, early, let's say. There's no right way to buy it. Dustin, what do you think? Do you agree with me?
I do and I don't. Just in that I think it's true that digital prices do fluctuate sometimes. I hear the argument, because this is one that probably is the most prevalent online when I made the tweet about it, is that people say, well, they gave it away for free and it was on PlayStation Plus and it was on sale for $10 constantly. And I get that. But ideally, this remaster is for people that didn't play the original or maybe didn't have a PlayStation. I'm sure there are thousands of players, tens of thousands of players that weren't involved, not playing PlayStation. Maybe they were a young kid when Horizon Zero Dawn came out, and now they're kind of in that space. And so now they're the ones that are going to be paying the premium over us who were here the whole time. So I think it's kind of shitty to charge a premium like that to increase the price on your new players. My main point in my tweet was just that this is the way of the road with digital games, and particularly if there wasn't a physical aspect to it, that you could still go and get Horizon. You can circumvent the price increase by going and buying a physical copy for $10 or $15. So it was kind of a side point that I was making, though people took it as me defending the price increase. That's just like, there's an easy way around getting Sony's complete and total price control of the PlayStation Store. And that's to go and buy a disc, where they don't have control of that anymore.
What do you think, Chris? Do you think it's shady for them to have done this?
I think I'm kind of in the middle on it, where it's just like, yeah, I don't think it's not exactly a kind thing to do, but at the same time, if you have this, it's kind of, I think the cost of giving players the option for that $10 upgrade. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, I mean, if that's available to you, then I kind of understand why they did that. I have a hard time finding fault in the reasoning, I guess. Even if I do think it's a little bit, it's a little bit shady.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think, inherently shady. It's like, yeah, now you're going to be interested in it, we're going to raise the price, but that's just kind of let me put a finer point on why I have a problem with really being, well, like that, where I think I should say that there is no problem in that it kind of suggests that sales are permanent. That like, what we should the creators, the publishers, the developers should be allowed to kind of put their games up and down based on demand. It would be kind of stupid in some sense to not charge a higher premium for The Last of Us now that the HBO show is bigger, yeah. And maybe it works both ways. Maybe Borderlands movie being so bad hurts the brand and you want to just charge a little less. It's like, I don't know. I think if you cared enough about Horizon, you would have bought it for the many years that you could have bought it for a cheap price. And like Dustin said, you can still buy it physically if you want for a cheap price. So it's not that I'm defending the move per se, but rather that, again, I don't like where this leads, because it just doesn't make any sense. Then that I actually think where this leads is prices being more stubbornly high. If the assumption is that they can't fluctuate and only must go down, then people are going to keep their prices higher because they're going to be afraid to go down, in my opinion. That's what the market would suggest anyway. We'll see. All right. By the way, I'm not paying that upgrade price until I'm not playing it right away. When Horizon 3, whenever that happens, comes, whether it's in a year, 2 years, 5 years, then I'll play them all again. And at that time, I'll buy my $10 upgrade. Okay. Guys, what do you think about this whole story with Astrobot and Square Enix and the kind of conspicuous absence of Square Enix characters in the game, especially considering just the myriad of partners that Sony worked with, including Microsoft-owned Activision, to get some of their, characters in here? Eurogamer reports on Stephen Totillo's. Stephen Totillo has like a Substack style publication about games. He talked to Nicolas Doucet, who is the studio head of Team Asobi over in Japan, and he said that it was easy for Asobi to work with a lot of publishers, that people were really eager. I think he said something like maybe half of the partners they went to like just were like, yeah, of course, like whatever you want, whatever you need. And he said, quote, "It's difficult to comment on why," and it's bracketed because it's just in reference to what he's saying. It's like why Square Enix didn't approve any cameos. We really respect the choice of each publisher, end quote. I feel like there is an awkwardness to this. It definitely is about licensing costs, probably. And I discussed this on that appearance I did on the other podcast. But I feel like there's something behind it. Because this isn't the kind of opportunity that you shake Sony upside down for. As like a longtime partner. And you were like, no, you're not paying us enough for Cloud or the Buster Sword or whatever they wanted to use in the game. That's their right. And that probably is literally at the end of the day what it is. But the question is why it would be so strenuous to work with each other. And I'd like to know more about that, because my only other theory is that it's being held back intentionally as DLC, which I think would be a great idea. But maybe you wouldn't want to be so vague about it. And maybe it's that it ends up being DLC once Square Enix sees how much money they can make by selling maybe a DLC pack or an expansion or whatever. So yeah, I think it's just awkward. Do you agree, Dustin, that there's like could be something more to this? Because I just don't see why they wouldn't want to eagerly work with each other, and especially why Square Enix wouldn't want to work with Sony. It could be as easy as you're not paying us enough money, but why again shake upside down your benefactor like this? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, and it is. This is total speculation here, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is one of maybe the biggest exclusive on PlayStation this year. And so it when you look at it in that light, it is a really odd choice that they would choose to not be included in this. But at the same time, this comes off of a time where I think it was at some point this year, Square Enix was talking about being more multi-platform and wanting to have their games on PC. They just recently put the Pixel remasters on Xbox. And so maybe there's a light concern that they feel like we've cozied up too close to PlayStation and we really want to be viewed more as a multi-platform publisher than as a PlayStation first publisher. Personally, I think that a cameo in Astrobot really doesn't make a difference in that. So maybe that line of thinking isn't really correct, but that's really the only thing I can think of right now. Is that maybe they wish that Rebirth was on PC and they are frustrated about the deal that they've made to some degree, or maybe there is some other weird business awkwardness going on with PlayStation right now. It's hard to say, but in the end, them being an Astrobot, I think would have just been fun and cool for both them and the fans. So hopefully at some point they change their mind, like you said, in a DLC.
Yeah, I hope they do too. And hopefully they'll be compelled by the success of the game. Still unclear exactly how well it sold, but I would say it sold quite well. We'll see soon enough. Chris, do you feel like there's any weirdness here between Sony and Square Enix?
Yeah, I would say, of course. I think, and whatever weirdness is there is relatively recent because, like, obviously, the Buster Sword was in Playroom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
was just looking that up.
So clearly, whatever is bothering them is relatively recent. You know, it's at the very least something that has happened, you know, post launch of Playroom, and you know, obviously before today, and so there's clearly something because I don't really see a good reason as to why they would agree to Playroom, but not Astrobot. Outside of maybe something to do with maybe like a publishing deal, maybe Dustin's on the right track with like the, you know, Rebirth and maybe the contractual, you know, obligations of that game and like where that game's allowed to go. Like I really don't know. But something is up and it's recent. That much I think is pretty obvious.
It's funny to think about that, about like how Square has kind of counter leverage to say like, well, loosen this shit up a little bit for us and we'll give you access to these things. And that's obviously not worth it for them, for Sony to do. So
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's unclear. It seems fairly obvious that Final Fantasy VII Trilogy is on a different set of rules than everything else. Like the Square Enix team is talking about, like Naoki Yoshida, I think, was talking about openly, like, we want to bring the game to Xbox. Like we want to bring the game to Xbox. Like they're just even talking about it openly. So there's some obviously different set of marketing rules and availability rules for that game. But I think that there's probably some frustration. You can imagine one hypothetical scenario would be, and this is just playing this out, it's probably not this, but some element of it of really Square Enix undercutting their own products over and over again by never being satisfied with how anything ever does. And the splash damage that does to the platforms that you're kind of married to for those kinds of games. I still find it really frustrating that they were upset about selling 3 million copies of Final Fantasy 16 in like a week or whatever it was. It's like, what did you think? Like, who do you think you are in some sense? It's 2024. What do you think? You're fucking Madden, or Fortnite? And then you see contemporary Japanese publishers of the same or similar size and reach celebrating the selling 2 million copies of Street Fighter or 3 million copies of Dragon's Dogma or whatever, and they're like amped up. And meanwhile, every quarter, Square Enix is like, oh, we're not satisfied. Didn't meet expectations. That's probably a pretty frustrating thing from both sides. And I don't know why they undercut themselves like that so badly and don't have more realistic expectations in forecasting. Their forecasting is just so bad. It's so rosy. It's weird.
Yeah, it's clearly an issue. It's clearly an issue with their ability to project or accurately assess information than it is a problem with like Square Enix's ability to deliver like a good game,
right?
Or like one that delivers on at least their metrics. It's weird, very bizarre.
That's the frustrating thing is like there's a real disparity between how they talk about their own games and the actual quality of the games as dictated by a series of people around the world on Metacritic and so on and so forth, critics and media types. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is considered like an absurdly good game, and they're like, meh. And Final Fantasy 16 is like a really, really impressive game in my opinion, in all ways, like in all I love that game so much. I thought it was awesome. And they're like, nah, it's okay. And it's like, well, it kind of is wearing off on everyone. Like it makes you almost unenthusiastic to even support you. You don't even give a shit about the people that are here. Like you always want more. You're not set. Like everything's got to sell 15 million copies. You're not going to sell that many copies. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth did worse than Final Fantasy VII Remake because it is a sequel tied to a console with a much lower attach rate right now, or sell-through rate, compared to where Final Fantasy VII Remake comes to PS4 at the end of the PS4's life cycle. It's like it just doesn't seem like like you said, Chris, the forecasting is just so weird. It's like, what are you guys thinking? And then it makes it seem like everyone's like, oh, what a joke. This game didn't sell well. It's like, dude, you sold millions of copies. That's great. Congratulations. Yeah, I don't know. It makes everything seem ethereal and fake with them. Because no matter what, you could have an obvious dud, like they supported Babylon's Fall or Foam Stars, or you can have these games where like, wow, this is like the cream of the crop, and they're like, no, none of this is good enough for us. Like, okay, very well. Speaking of Square Enix, this story comes from Push Square, and this has been making the rounds. In fact, someone wrote in about it, so I will let him introduce the story. The Snack Squatch wrote in. Said, hey guys, have any of you read or heard of the Dragon Quest III 2D HD remake interview from the Tokyo Game Show? Kazuhiko Torishima and Yuji Horii spoke on the censorship happening in the West with many games. I do agree with what Chris said last week about how everyone is overusing the word woke, but there are still instances where it does exist in games. I see people saying the changes aren't a big deal, but why even change them in the first place then? I think the biggest issue is changing Toriyama's original artwork, especially with him passing away this year. The changes that have been made aren't very major, but I feel if people feel strongly about censorship, then they need to start voting with their wallets. I just worry if these little changes get brushed off, boundaries and the things that get changed will become more and more drastic. Thanks for all that you do. So what he's referring to is this conversation that did happen at TGS. I do wonder, I was reading some stuff about it. I'm like, I wonder if they really thought that this was going to blow up like it did, because they're speaking kind of to just people on social media, on TikTok or something, and they might not have been thinking about it because it's written here. It's like it's surprisingly candid, what they're saying, and so the big issue here, I guess, is Dragon Quest III HD 2D's character art. Specifically, there's like a female character who's like a female warrior with like a 6-pack and all that. And in the original artwork, like her thighs are out and she's like all muscular, and it's very Vanillaware actually in some sense. You know, her tits are out and whatever. And so in the new one that is coming out shortly later this fall, she has like a shirt on underneath her bra, so like you can't really see her boobs. Like she still has cleavage, but you see it through the shirt. She has like shorts, like almost like booty shorts on under her like little loincloth. And they've just like kind of, she's still sexual in some way, but desexualized her. And this has been going around and has been, I guess, upsetting some people. This taken into account as well that they removed in the new Dragon Quest male and female and have made it type A and type B. So kind of some weird shit in my opinion, but okay. They were asked about this. And specifically, so Kazuhiko Torishima is apparently Shonen Jump's editor. I don't know anything about him, but Yuji Horii, obviously the creator of Dragon Quest. They were interviewed by these Japanese people at TGS. And he basically explains that, quote, if there's too much exposure, the age rating goes up. It means we won't be able to sell it as an all ages product, but that he doesn't understand the tweaks either. And then Torishima interjected here, according to Push Square, quote, there's a religious concept from the West, especially in America, that influences their approach to sex education, right? Their approach to compliance is really narrow-minded. When selling manga in America, everything had to be categorized by age groups. Because there's a risk of lawsuits, the company also has to get insurance. Doing business with such a ridiculous country is really frustrating. Because of that, Japan also gets negatively influenced, end quote. And then Horii is later asked about the type A and type B stuff, and he says, quote, I really wonder who's even complaining about this, end quote, because he's upset about the stuff too. In other words, who is complaining about having a male and female option? There's a lot to get through here, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts. Dustin, start with you. What do you think about, because I agree, I think it is ridiculous, but I do think Torishima has an outdated view on what's censoring things in the United States, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, just some background info that I looked up is that Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, this is the new one coming out in November, is rated E10+. And the original version that they re-released only on Switch is rated T for teen. And so they might have been looking at it and decided that they wanted it to be a rated E game, and these were the necessary changes. And so they must have some kind of information that having it be an E-rated game will be more profitable than a T game. It's important to remember too, Dragon Quest 3, you weren't going to see that kind of character art in the game itself because of the technology at the time. But even back then, they didn't have a rating system like we do now. But my thought was, well, why don't they just make the remake rated T for teen and not make these changes? Because Dragon Quest 11 was rated T for teen. And maybe they're looking at that. Could they have information that the T rating was something that held Dragon Quest 11 back from certain sales? I don't know. That seems questionable to me, but I would imagine that's probably the main driver behind it, because they both mention ratings specifically. It's that fitting it, they have to fit it into the American standard of these different ratings. So you could make the argument that our rating system is too strict on women in revealing clothing or something like that. I could see that as well, but it's not surprising to me that they had to change it to fit it into that, those parameters of E for everyone. So I don't know. Bringing up whether, it's the right decision with Akira Toriyama passing away, I can't say that for sure. I would imagine that he did this key art a long time ago. This is probably his work. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's already known, but I don't know. I feel like it's unfortunate, and maybe there is a problem culturally between Japan and the US about this, but I'm not surprised. It's just kind of the way it is in a lot of ways.
Chris, I saw you kind of agreeing with
Hori's conception of kind of a religious aspect to why these things are censored. But to me, this feels very outdated. Like maybe by like 30 years or so. I mean, like when they were launching Dragon Quest, that's definitely true. Like, but not
right.
No, I don't think.
Well, I would say I don't think it's necessarily strictly religious. I think but what I do think is there's a general kind of culture in the West that is influenced by religion. Like, I think that's pretty undeniable. And there is kind of a built-in shame about sexuality and religion. I think most of the cases, I think in most cases that's just true. I don't think it's necessarily strictly like, oh, just Christian families, but I think just growing up in the West, you're kind of coming up in that environment a little bit. One thing I will say, there's some important missing context here that I think is kind of important. First one that I'm curious about is, how old is this person? Because that's like my first question. That's my first question every time I see this now. It's like, okay, well, I don't know. And it's one of those character designs where it's like, I can't quite tell how old this person is supposed to be.
I feel like maybe in their 20s.
I would assume adult, but at the same time, like, look, you can never assume anymore.
Yeah.
But I think on a more serious angle, look, I do think censorship is annoying. Like, there's probably never going to be a situation where something is censored in the West and not in Japan or elsewhere where I'm not irritated by the change. And I think that's always worthy to kind of call out and be like, oh, what are we doing? Are we not like mature enough to handle this stuff? Are we not respectful of other cultures enough to adopt these things and kind of take them for what they are without imposing our own beliefs or mores onto them? Like, I think that's valuable, to, take the art of another country as it is and not necessarily force a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. But I mean, when he says specifically, like in the write-in, he mentions like, Chris says everyone's overusing the word the word woke, and I agree, but there are still instances where this does exist, and it's in the context of this. It's like, I come from a very specific place where I'm old enough to remember where the anger over sexualization of women in video games was not specifically left-wing at all. Like, I remember Mass Effect on being a story on Fox News with Cooper Lawrence talking about how there's like gratuitous sex scenes and how like, they're just treating women like objects on Fox News in like 2008. I remember like Glenn Beck talking about Grand Theft Auto 4, telling everybody how like they're teaching children to treat women like whores, and it's like, why it's hard for me to call these things woke and not just culturally loud, like self-righteous censorship, is because I've seen the cycles, and I've seen them come from every single angle of the political spectrum, to the point where like delineating it or like segregating it into its own is like, well, this is just explicitly woke. I don't know if I agree with that aspect of the criticism. Do I think it's stupid to censor this stuff? Yeah, I do. And there's probably never going to be a situation where you're going to catch me being hypocritical on that. I would just argue that our diagnosis of the problem is too narrow for what is actually happening. Or even just something as simple as like, I remember when Grand Theft Auto came to the Apple machine, I can't remember, Apple Arcade or something, and they censored the Confederate flag on one of the characters' shirts.
Yeah.
And that was deemed as like a huge like woke thing, but it was actually like this contractual obligation in Apple where it's like they can't have I remember a lot of history games had games removed because overnight there was just like kind of this thing, this mandate placed in where it's like nothing on the Apple Arcade can have this imagery on it, and that was literally all to just avoid controversy and protect a bottom line, and that I think is the primary motivation more than any, moral sanding or anything like that. But yeah,
I do agree with you.
Art. Come on.
I agree with you about it's always in protection of the bottom line. I do think that these companies have different ideas of how they can go about doing that and get advice from people that I think, because in my opinion, it's like the same energy that censors Dragon Quest III art ensures that you can't have greater than A cup breasts in Dragon Age, the Veilguard.
Right.
It's like, that's all interconnected. And that's not, I reject kind of, I feel like the right wing has such little
power right now, and and I mean like the religious right. I feel like the religious right's like at an all-time weak
Oh yeah,
point.
the religious
And-
right has no
And so to me, I'm like that kind of more, because it really was like the religious right did fuck everything up from the mid 80s through the late 90s. I would say was very active in not only in video games, but really more in Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, and just fucking everything up along the way. And it was them.
Yeah.
But I think
I remember Harry Potter in the mid or early 2000s. I remember that too. It was
right,
like a
Harry
weird
Potter.
kinda-
And I remember things turning. I remember things becoming more left wing, or what I would say like a more secularly left wing, when Jack Thompson started going after Grand Theft Auto. And then I'm like, well, this is tinged with like left wing, anti-gun, violence sorts of stuff.
Mhm.
And then the like, what was weird, and I guess this is kind of like horseshoe theory sort of stuff, is like the sex puritanism that used to come
Right.
from the right, like the religious right, now started coming from like the so-called woke left. And
right.
I think those, so it's kind of unholy in some sense. Like the way we got here is like everyone should just allow for things to be created within normal bounds of reason.
Right.
The Confederate
100%.
flag is nowhere near what I would consider like the edge of the normal bounds of reason. You know?
No, exactly. And yeah, to me, I just let it all in, like that's kind of been my perspective the entire time. It's just like, listen, if you're going to have a game that, has representation in it and diversity and it touches on trans stuff, I think that's totally cool. I think that's fine. I think you're well within your right to do that. But I think it also behooves you to give players as many options as possible and to, showcase as much as possible as well. And I think censoring art like this is just weird, regardless of who's advocating for it or not. Like I could give a fuck, because on a principle level, I just think it's just dumb.
I think a key thing in this situation is that it's not that like Sony is going in and saying, no, you can't do that, or a platform holder or whatever. It's like a self-censorship from Square Enix.
It's like preemptive.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it comes down to the rating thing, because I don't think Square Enix is afraid to show characters that have tits out, as we know from earlier this year.
Clearly not.
That's true.
They're clearly not afraid.
That's true, but and I do think you're right about the ratings thing. But I and it's also true that Dragon Quest III originally came out when the ESRB didn't exist, so you didn't have to do anything. So that's important to know too. But do they think kids are going to buy Dragon Quest III? Are they out of their mind?
That's a great question.
I mean, like that to me is like where you're getting questionable feedback or like making weird decisions just from the sense of like who 10-year-olds aren't going to play Dragon Quest 3. It's for like the 35-year-old dude with a Switch. I hope you guys know that. Maybe explains a lot if you don't, because I'm sure it won't meet expectations. So
yeah,
I'm going to buy it. So and give Chris those anime breasts of a questionable provenance, and let him.
Yeah,
make
did
his
we get an
decisions
answer
for
on this
himself.
age? By the way, did we figure out what?
No, because I think.
I looked it up.
Yeah. Okay.
So this character that was censored is the female warrior, and according to the wiki, it says around 20.
Oh,
okay. All right.
The hero of the game is 16, but
not our. It reminds me of a Grand Blue Fantasy when Micah and I were going through, and it's like, oh, look at this girl, and it's like she's 6,000 years old. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, okay,
yeah. It's always the joke.
fair enough. Yeah.
Oh man.
All right. A little Kojima stuff here. Nothing too crazy to get into. I just thought this was funny. Over at VGC, they write, Kojima says Death Stranding 2's release date is decided, but he can't reveal it. Speaking during a special stage, they write over at VGC for a presentation for Death Stranding 2 on the beach, the director claimed that the release date for the game has been decided, but it couldn't be announced during the presentation due to unforeseen circumstances. Quote, I haven't said the release date today, but the release date has already been decided, and I'm currently working on it in preparation for that. Since we are talking about 2025, it will be released next year, so we will announce it at some point next year. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, we cannot announce it today. Dustin, why is Kojima keeping the release date a secret?
There's could be a few factors. It might be a Sony thing, where They don't know where they're releasing some of their games, and they want to make sure they space them out in their lineup. Could be waiting for a small little game called Grand Theft Auto 6 to figure out when they're releasing that game. Those are probably the two biggest things, is just the strategy of it. But for a developer, it's important that they have an internal release date to try to like hit the right, the right markers in order to get to that date. But it also could just be that they have a release date, but Kojima doesn't. Did Death Stranding 1 get delayed?
I feel like it did. I'll look it up for you.
I feel like every game back then got delayed.
Yeah, I'm trying to know if Kojima's a notorious delayer.
Death Stranding.
See, I'll look up Metal Gear Solid 5 too.
Yeah, we'll figure this out. Chris, do you have any thoughts here on when? I feel like Death Stranding 2 might come out, in the spring or something like that. I think would be pretty cool. Let me see here.
Yeah.
Synopsis.
I do think that GTA is probably like it's got to be a scary year for a lot of people with undecided release dates, right? Because if you're on that day, you're done. If for some reason you just pick the day that GTA picks, you're sober. And so they're probably waiting. I would imagine though that like the Death Stranding release date is something that they would want to have a bigger marketing beat for than just kind of like an offhand interview with Kojima. Like I would imagine that they want, I don't know, maybe even like I could maybe even seeing like maybe like a Game Awards thing where they kind of like mention it or something like that. We're definitely not going to get that answer in like, some guy talking to him.
By the way, Death Stranding was slightly delayed late in its development, but apparently achieved its planned release year of 2019.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to also point out that Kojima gave a pretty interesting interview to Variety, the publication, the TV and movie industry publication. If people want to go check it out, it's called Video Game Legend. Hideo Kojima talks Death Stranding movie, signing with WME for his next phase in Hollywood. There's some interesting stuff in here. He talks a little bit about all 3 projects that he's working on with games that we know about right now. He talks about Death Stranding 2 a little bit. He talks about that OD game that he's doing with Microsoft, or that movie or whatever it's going to be. And then he also talks about Physint, which apparently is still very much conceptual and furthest out. And I think we know that. So it goes some, Death Stranding 2 and then OD, which seems like it's well along, and then this other stuff. But if people want to go read it, it really talks about and gets into his ambition in doing movies and being such a fan of film. But the one point that he makes over and over again that I think people will get out of this, that I think is interesting, kind of the through line, is that he feels like the nexus of movies, television, film, comics, whatever, the nexus of all of it is like digital. And that, so he was talking about how people are now making backgrounds in live action movies in Unreal Engine. He's making his OD thing with Jordan Peele, who loves games but never knew how to make a game, and how they're kind of segueing over how Physint is this like ground up thing that's being built with Sony Pictures to be a movie, to be a TV show, to be a game, to be all these different things. And that he feels like we're at this point now where it makes sense, that there was a point where it made no sense and that's why it didn't work. And it's working more now because it makes more sense. And so it's a pretty interesting interview. I highly recommend people go check it out if you want.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things to discuss real quick. Remedy, according to GamesIndustry.biz, is borrowing 15 million euros from Tencent. Tencent already owns a piece of Remedy, I think something like 10%. The finance will be converted, according to GamesIndustry.com, to a maximum of approximately 800,000 new shares, representing 5.98% of all Remedy shares, and a convertible loan agreement. So this is just notable if you want to go look into the Remedy's finances. I wonder what's going on over there, because it seems, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but it's just from the outside, it just seems somewhat unsteady. Alan Wake 2 is still not making any money, or it's not profitable, which is not a great sign, because you're hoping to make your money back. But what about the next game? Right. You're going to bet the whole farm on the next game or whatever. So that game seems to be in a strange position. Remember, we were confused when it came out that it didn't really chart. And a lot of people thought it was the physical release, the lack of a physical release, which I think did hurt it, but I don't know how much it hurt it. And then they announced with Annapurna Pictures that they're going to do stuff with them with Control and Alan Wake. And that deal, I don't know if you've read into that. We didn't really get into it on the show, but Annapurna Interactive's entire staff quit, and like 25 people. And apparently this deal was made in parallel to that deal and was part of the predicate of why people were upset, because the deal was just kind of made with like outside of that. Like that, they just seem like they're spurring up partners because they need more liquidity or something. And I'm concerned about them in some sense. Like, I'm curious what's going on with them. I could be worrying about nothing. They might just, but you don't go out and borrow money and use shares of the company as leverage and all of that if you don't need the capital to get over the hump with whatever. And they already have a publishing relationship with a 505. I think they're working with Epic on a different game. I don't know, man. I'm interested to see what's going on with them. So I don't expect you guys to have anything to say unless you want to, but I wanted to throw that out there because I just feel like something strange, and it sucks because they're great, but maybe they're just over leveraged. They also it seemed unrealistic to me that they said they were going to make Control 2 for $50 million or something. I'm like, that seems very unrealistic. They are making it in Europe. It's going to be way cheaper to do business there, but it just seems unrealistic. So maybe they just needed a little extra boost to get over the edge on some of these projects. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Naoki Yoshida, according to Video Games on Sports Illustrated, so SI.com does video games coverage now, and they have an interesting conversation with Naoki Yoshida. A lot of it is about Final Fantasy XIV and its turnaround and its success. But one of the things that he says here I thought were interesting was about the Final Fantasy game he wants to remake, and about a Final Fantasy game that I assume is already being remade, and made me confused about his statement. So he's asked by Sports Illustrated, if you could remake any classic Final Fantasy game, what would you make? And he says, quote, "Oh man, that's a super tough question. The one that I would like to make myself would be Final Fantasy 3, I think." That's, by the way, just, this is me now, weird choice. Of course, I do know there are requests for Final Fantasy 9 to be made, but when you think about Final Fantasy 9, it's a game with huge volume. When you think about all of that volume, I wonder if it's possible to remake that as a single title. It's a difficult one. It is a tough question, end quote. Dustin, is this like a feint? Or are they so siloed that he doesn't really know anything about the Final Fantasy IX remake? Or does this suggest that all the hullabaloo about Final Fantasy IX's remake isn't true? Because I just found this statement in a vacuum to be kind of strange. It's in the NVIDIA leak. It's been talked about by, I think, reliable people at this point. I don't have any sources on it at all, but what do you think of this?
My understanding, it is real, but I wonder if this is a translation thing, or if there's something. I mean, it would be weird that he doesn't know, but I can't imagine the Final Fantasy IX remake is to the degree of Final Fantasy VII remake. And I wonder even if it's going to be somewhere in between remaster and remake, right? Because they did Final Fantasy VIII remastered, which is basically like a really nice up-res with some better assets and stuff like that, but it's not full-blown remake. And I wonder if 9 will be something like, hey, we remade all the assets, all new art, new engine, and it runs beautifully, but it's not like we're changing the complete combat style, expanding on all the different things that happen in the game. It's just the same game, but much more beautiful, right? That's what I would imagine it would be. And maybe he's thinking about it in the context of a Final Fantasy VII remake, that it's like, oh, if we did that, it would have to be crazy multiple games. And maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. I've never played Final Fantasy IX, so I don't know. But yeah, and saying he wants to remake Final Fantasy 3, I know nothing about 3 at all. So felt like, feels weird. I feel like it should be 6. Everyone wants a 6 remake.
Well, it wasn't him. It was it was someone else at Square Enix that said it would take them 30 years to remake Final Fantasy 6. I'm like, are you guys out of your minds? Like, what are you talking about? Why does everything have to be like these? Your mind instantly goes to these ornate anthology style games. It's like, you don't have to do this for everything.
Right.
Final Fantasy 9, I believe Final Fantasy 9 is coming too, because it's in the leak, and it's just been, I feel like people have talked about it that would be in the know, but maybe it's that he's just fainting in some sense and being, kind of winking and nodding. Like you said, maybe it's a translation issue. Maybe it's so siloed that he really doesn't know, which is believable in some sense. One hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. That's not uncommon behind the scenes at many corporations. But yeah, where these guys' minds go is just so strange. It's like, why couldn't Final Fantasy IX be remade? Like, what is it about Final Fantasy IX? What are you talking about? You know, I don't understand. They should just do the 2D HD thing to Final Fantasy VI. That'd
be amazing.
And Final Fantasy 3 is, yeah, it's fine. It's a weird one to want to remake. I think any of the first three are kind of not throwaway Final Fantasies, but the worst ones. All right. Finally, I saw this over on Gamatsu. I don't know if you guys remember this game, but El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron is getting an HD remaster on PlayStation 5. This news comes from the game's director from Tokyo Game Show 2024. So a publisher called UTV Ignition, which doesn't exist anymore. It was one of their last games that they published was El Shaddai, which was done by a Tokyo studio that they opened, and it came out in the summer of 2011. I actually reviewed it back when I was a journalist, and I gave it a 5. People were really upset at me because it's a much more beloved game than that for a lot of folks. It's an action game that kind of has like these spiritual, biblical sort of roots to it. And it's very ethereal and strange. I really wasn't into it. I thought it was very clumsy. I'd be very interested to see again if it comes back out, and it looks like it's going to at some point. It'll be fun to go back to it and see what it's all about. But did you guys play this game? And if so, do you have any memories of it?
I've never heard of this game in my life. And the name is ridiculous.
It is.
And this trailer doesn't look all that appealing to me. So
yeah,
it just doesn't even, I don't know. The remastered graphics don't look all that great, but yeah, I've never heard of this ever.
Chris, have you heard of this game? El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron?
Not even a little bit. Even reading the document, I was like, I think I got to this part and I was like, for some reason my brain was like, that's not real. Like I thought for some reason, like, oh, Colin's lying for the first time ever, probably.
I thought you guys, yeah, for some reason I thought maybe you would have known about this one. I don't know why, but
yeah, no, this is news to me. I just looked at the trailer too. It's like, doesn't really, it's not striking to me at all.
It's heady and weird. I remember even internally people were upset at me, like being not upset, but just being like, you gave it a 5? Like yeah, I just wasn't into it, you know? So
internally people at IGN were like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah. That happened all the time, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I always disagreed with people's scores and vice versa. So like when we gave, I didn't play it very much, but just seeing it, I was like, when Skyward Sword got a 10, I'm like, yeah, right. You know, break. All right, let's get into what we're playing. And I'll just begin and go through it quick because I have nothing really say that I haven't already said. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. I platinumed it last night, platinum number 167. I really liked it. I think it's appropriately priced. I think it's really deep and fun. I probably played it for 40 hours, maybe something like that. The PSN clock for this game is out of control. It's definitely not accurate. Whatever it says, it's definitely not true. But I sat down, as I said earlier in the show with Brad. We did a whole Sacred Symbols Plus episode about Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, a review discussion and spoilercast. So I'll leave my discussion for that. But I do recommend it. I think it's a really fun game. And then I've been playing on my Portal Kinitsugami, as I said earlier in the show as well, Path of the Goddess. I'm on the last boss now, so I'm just about done with it. I don't know if I'm going to go through with the Platinum. The Platinum is actually twice as common as the Dead Rising Platinum, which is surprising to me because it's pretty tough to get. But you have to do the whole New Game Plus thing and all the rest. So I don't know how far I'm going to go with it, but I would like to beat it at least and just kind of scratch it off the list. So that's all I'm playing now. I pre-ordered Until Dawn and downloaded it, the remake. This game, I am wondering if this game is going to be I think it's going to be fine, but I wonder how they feel about it. I couldn't find it on the store. Like I had to search for it.
Oh.
I was like, there's got to be somewhere. I probably for about 2 minutes, I just was like cycling through different menus. I'm like, it's got to be somewhere. Right? Like, and it's just nowhere. And I don't know if that was just me. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is procedurally generated and all the rest. So who the hell knows, like the order in which it comes up. But I thought that was strange. I downloaded it. So I downloaded it and I'll play that. And then Silent Hill comes out a few days later. And then a few days after that comes that Metaphor game, which I'll also play. So we have a few games that are going to keep me busy. I don't know what comes out after that I might be interested in. That Expeditions game comes out later in the month. That looks pretty cool too. So a few things coming up, but that's really what I've been spending my time with. So nothing really new or interesting to say otherwise. But I see here both of you are playing a game called Echo Point Nova, which I had never heard of.
Yeah.
I went and looked it up. It looks cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to come to console, but yeah, I'll leave it to you guys. And Chris, why don't you go first, and then you can kick it off to Dustin, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's really the only thing that I've been playing. I was obviously gone for the last week and a half. I think even maybe something like 2 weeks. It felt like a lot longer. But I only had my Steam Deck, and I was like trying to find games. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I can jump into something casual. And I had seen this game. Like a lot of people had recommended this to me, like just casually. Like I would get message requests on Twitter that would be like, "You got to check this game out. It's a Chris-ass game." And I looked at it. I was like, "Yeah, maybe." And then Dustin reached out and he was like, "You got to play this." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, this has breached the walls now, where it's like." Now I have no excuse. I was always going to do it, but I think I wanted to wait until I was at my PC. But I figured, like, before I got on the plane, I was like, you know what? I'll download it, give it a shot, see what it's all about. And I put about, so far, I mean, it's pretty early. I put like 2 hours into it, but I'm really into whatever this is. This is kind of a difficult game to describe because the structure is unlike a lot of games that I've played.
Chris, is this an open zone game?
I think so.
That's what I thought. I thought I'm like, this actually might be an open zone game.
Yeah, this was the first. Yeah, I was playing it. I was like, this must be what people are talking about, because this isn't quite. It's not open world because there's no world per se. This is such a difficult game to describe, but basically, like on from the ground level up, it's kind of a flow state kind of game. A little bit like, it reminded me a little bit of Ghost Runner in some sense, where it's really kind of about like moving through spaces kind of quickly and getting a hang of like movement mobility. But it's like Ghost Runner mixed with like SSX, mixed with like a little bit of Titanfall in there. It's like, it's kind of difficult to put in a box, but you're basically, it's a first person shooter, where you can just kind of summon this electric snowboard essentially, and you can just like skate across various like floating islands with their own like combat challenges in them. And as you complete them, you unlock more like weapons and more gear. Like you get like a grenade, you have a pickaxe that can like, you can break through walls and terrain and stuff. So there's like a little bit of like a hint of Minecraft in there. Like it's really strange, but I'm really into it. I love these flow state games that get you into like this weird zone where the controls are a little bit finicky, but because you can do so much, you always end up in a situation where you pull off some crazy shit and it just feels really rewarding. But it's a combat challenge oriented game. Like you're going around like completing, clearing a thing full of enemies and in the most stylish ways you possibly can with your board and your different guns and your melee abilities and ground pounds and stuff like that. It's really cool. I recommend, if anybody's curious about it, just look at some of the trailers about it. I think there's a demo, right?
Yeah.
I just jumped in because it was like I felt like it was like appropriately priced, so I was like, I'll grab it. I actually forgot when I was gonna go buy it. I was like, oh, I guess I'll buy this, and then I forgot that I had my Concord refund money in my Steam wallet. So that went to
nice.
that went to these guys. And yeah, it's cool. I don't have much experience with it, but it is definitely like a Chris-ass game. It's very momentum, physics oriented. The SSX mixed with like a Doom Eternal style, like combat driven FPS is like really, really cool. Like it's a really interesting idea. I understand why it hasn't been attempted before, because it is kind of difficult to kind of first person snowboarding with combat is a lot to juggle. It actually reminds me a little bit of that game Rollerdrome in some way, where it's like it's a very similar kind of like almost like a sports combat fusion type thing going on. But it's cool, it's dope. I don't know if I've really played many things like it, and that's a really, it's a high compliment, especially if it's fun. So I'm definitely going to be putting some more time into it. I don't know if there is like some kind of narrative going on, but I'm not really. I was on the plane when I tried it out. I didn't really give a shit. I was just like, listen, I want to get a feel for this, and I'm totally into it. So I'm definitely going to be sticking with it more. I think I actually recommend it. But like definitely look at a trailer first, see if this is your type of game, because I think if this is your type of game, you know it. Because even when I first saw the trailer, I was like, I know I'll like this, but I was really just like putting it off for no reason other than I was just like lazy about it.
Yeah, this game, so it's developed by Greylock Studio, which some of you may remember they made the game Severed Steel, which was a game that Jaffe heavily championed. And I believe Severed Steel is available on PlayStation. Yeah, it is on the PlayStation Store. So I imagine this game right now is only out on PC, but if it's like Severed Steel, it will make its way over at some point. But yeah, as far as like a lot of what Chris was saying, what is it called? Like the CSGO, like when people are skating around with CSGO characters.
Oh, like, the CSGO like knife surfing or whatever the hell.
Knife surfing, yes,
something like that.
It reminds me kind of like that because, as Chris said, you summon this hoverboard and that's your run. So sometimes you'll like stop and take out a few enemies, and then you'll get your board out. Maybe you'll fly around. One very important thing, I can't believe you didn't mention this, Chris. The grapple hook in this game rules.
Yeah.
But it is a very interesting layout. The way that it reminded me kind of, if you've played Tears of the Kingdom, there's the Sky Islands. It's kind of like that, where there's all these different islands, and each one is its own individual level, which has like, you go into where the island is, and then there's a point where you begin combat for that level. So it has this element of exploration where you're going from level to level seamlessly. Sometimes getting to the level can be a challenge where it's like, okay, I gotta fly over here and then grapple onto this thing. And you can grapple onto clouds, which is awesome. So these clouds are like strategically placed. It's like, okay, grapple on that cloud, then try to grind on this thing and grapple over here, which is really fun. And it definitely has a little bit of a Doom Eternal feel where you want to be switching weapons constantly. You know, there is like more ranged weapons. There's a grenade launcher, which is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then there's like standard machine gun type stuff too. And this game absolutely rules. I love it. I have about, see what my Steam says here, 4.6 hours into it. And my understanding, it's not super long. It's maybe 12 hours or maybe more if you do everything in the game. But I've been total completionist with this, where there's little orbs to level up different things, and you unlock different perks that augment your character in a different way. There's a perk where if you are on your board and you slam into an enemy, you get a little bit of health back and the enemies go flying, which is really fun. And I'm just really impressed with this game. I found out about it. A YouTuber I really like, I highly recommend, Jack Frags. He mainly does FPS games. He does a lot of Battlefield and Call of Duty, Warzone type stuff. But he does highlight some of these smaller games, and this is one that he did a video on. And within minutes of watching the video, I turned to Holly and I said, I'm going to love this game. I got to check this out. So if you're interested, Echo Point Nova out on Steam, assumingly at some point on PlayStation. But if you like these flow state FPS games, it's absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, Severed Steel looks pretty cool too. Like I actually hadn't heard of this, but these guys, flow state FPS that's such a specific like style of game that like I don't anticipate it's going to be like most people's style, but I'm totally into this type of thing. There was another game somewhat recently, like in the last year, that I think a lot of people were recommending to me that like felt like it was of this vein, but there was like an anime kind of virtual novel. What the hell was?
Neon White.
Neon White.
Yeah, it reminds me of Neon White in some ways too.
Yeah. Like I remember the barrier for that was like the visual novel stuff for me. I was just like, I don't know really if I'm gonna like this as much. But this seems like that, but like without that stuff. So it's like win for me. Like it looks. Yeah, I don't know how this game's gonna do. Like I presume it's gonna. It's a smaller studio, small game. I imagine their expectations are like set appropriate, but it's cool, man. I recommend it. And I think it's fairly priced as well. Note that.
Right now it's 10% off, $22 on Steam, and it's considered overwhelmingly positive. So.
What else are you playing there, Dustin?
Oh, yeah. So the other two games, still playing Final Fantasy VI, was playing that this morning. Colin, I just passed the point. I'm still pretty early on, like within the first 3 or 4 hours. where it lets you pick 3 different characters.
Yeah.
You have to separate and do that.
Mhm.
There's this excellent sequence where you're on a ghost train that I really, really enjoyed. And the thing that's surprising me so far is that this game is really dark. Some real dark stuff happens in this game. And I mentioned last week, Holly has already played this game. And so I mentioned like, whoa, this is getting pretty heavy. She's like, oh yeah, this is just kind of scratching the surface. And Kefka, he's basically worse than Hitler. I was like, oh, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to learning more.
Oh yeah, it gets gnarly, dude.
Yeah, it's been pretty great so far.
Cool. I'm glad you're liking it. Yeah. So yeah, you met Cyan. The ghost train that's such an awesome scene. The music, the vibe, like the woods leading up to it, the beautiful backgrounds, and then the chuck of the train as you're on that stage, and then the really awesome fight as you're running in front of the train.
Dude, and if you have the one character, I don't remember his name, but he has like the different Street Fighter moves that you have to do.
Sabin.
The one, he will literally suplex the train, the entire train. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's awesome. There's a cool. It's 30 years old now, and you already did it, so it's not a spoiler for you. Is that I think you can use a Phoenix Down on the train and it just dies instantly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which
that's
is cool.
Great. That's awesome.
Well, I didn't either. I mean, I wouldn't have figured that out, but that was something you'll learn over time.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I'm really and then it says here you're also playing Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which Micah is also playing. My one observation, she's really likes it a lot, which is awesome. My one observation is it seems really zoomed in. Like when I look at it, I'm like, why is it so like zoom out a little bit for Christ's sake? Let me see a little bit of what's going on around me. But other than that, it looks really cool. What do you think of it?
If they zoomed it out anymore, the Switch might explode by having to render more stuff, because I hate to lead with this about this game, but it doesn't run well at all. It's very frustrating that it runs in a unlocked frame rate, kind of, where when you're in dungeons, it'll be for the most part 60 and fine. But when you're out in the actual overworld, it fluctuates all over the place, to the point where it made me feel a tiny bit weird at one point when I was playing it in the morning. It almost made me like motion sick, which feels very lame, and it hasn't happened since then, but it's just unfortunate because the game is pretty cool overall. I'm not in love with it, but this is the game where you play as Zelda. She really doesn't do combat, so everything you do in the game is through summoning different things or enemies that you find in the world. So a lot of the puzzles, it's like you have to stack some beds or something to jump up and get to a certain area. Or if there's enemies, you can summon some bats or a snake to fight for you, something like that. And it's fine. I'm not deeply compelled by it. I'm not too far in it either, but it's cute. It's a neat idea. It's a neat way to change up the 2D Zelda formula, but it's just so unfortunate that it's hampered by. I know I rag on Stinky Switch all the time, but this is a situation they should have just at least given you the option to cap the game at 30 FPS, because I would rather cap it than whatever they're doing with this, where it's just like all over the place. And maybe this is one that in theory Switch 2 would be able to boost the frame rate, but this is Nintendo we're talking about, so I don't have wishful thinking for that, but it's all right. If you're into Zelda and you've played all the other Zelda games, you're going to enjoy this one too, but it's nothing that I would say you need to run out if it's not really your thing and get.
Yeah, I'll have to ask Micah about that, because she's so much less sensitive to technical stuff, which I was forever too. It wasn't until I really played PS5 and played everything at 60 frames that I started to really truly appreciate, and now can never go back. She'll have that moment probably with the next Switch, which I'm sure will.
Do you remember the game that broke you with that? Like the specific one? Or was it just like a general kind of creepy?
Yeah, it might have been Miles Morales, maybe. That would be the first game I played on PS5, so that it must be that. But it's probably a sequence of games early on, like Kenna and just weird, even cartoony shit. Like what was that Octodad? Bug Snacks. Yeah,
Bug Snacks.
Bug.
Things just are so much smoother, and then you play them in sequence.
I forgot to mention this. This is like maybe like 2 months ago or something. I was shopping at H&M because they're the only place that has like stuff that fits me. And I was trying on a shirt, and over the loudspeaker, they were playing the fucking Bug Snacks theme song. And I remember being like, what is... At first I thought it was like, that sounds like Bug Snacks, but there's no way. And then there's like Bug Snack, and they say it. I'm like, what
That's
the
so
fuck
funny.
is going... Who's in charge of this?
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah,
That rules.
I can't believe I forgot to mention that. You mentioned it and it like summoned me. But
yeah, so
Exciting.
I'll have to ask her about the tech stuff with Zelda, because she really is digging it, which is cool. Like, she's gone back and she's like she's bought some other Zelda games and wants to play more of them. So I was like, that's cool.
oh yeah, nice.
More power to you. But yeah, just it seems like a ton of games are coming down the pike now. Are either of you going to play Until Dawn?
Nah.
I don't know. I just feel like there's more stuff on the horizon that's like more interesting to me. And
Until
I think
Gay.
Oh.
not clever at all. That's like a Derek.
It's the worst. Like, horrible.
It's like something Derek would say. It's like, you're gonna play Until Gay.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Dude, Derek,
Yeah.
when I'm surfing around on Instagram Reels, I don't think I follow, or at least I found him on there, and his like gay remakes of songs show up on my feed all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes they'll pop up. Sometimes they'll pop up and I'll see like people that I follow who like them and definitely don't know who he is. And it's like my cousins
That's
who
awesome.
like this like gay Avenged Sevenfold. Avenged Seamanfold, I think he named it or something. It's like some stupid shit. But dude, people like that. People like juvenile dumb stuff, you know? And I don't know. I think people got to stop pretending like they're above it. Some
Dude,
of that
the
stuff is
Toy
just genuinely
Story,
funny.
aren't you on the Toy Story one? You got a dick in me.
Oh yeah, we
That's legendary.
we all sang that one.
We all sang that.
Stupid.
All right, so No Until Dawn, Silent Hill. Are you guys gonna check that one out?
I think so.
Yeah.
That comes out when I'm in Japan.
Yeah, I
But
think it's the 8th or the 9th, something like that.
yeah, it seems like the atmosphere around this game is becoming much more positive. I know the Famitsu reviews came out, but it's not really saying much. But seems like people are more excited. I'm getting more curious about it. If it tanks in reviews, then it's going to be a skip for me. But I would say if it's an 8 or above, I'm in right when I get back.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy it either way. I'll pre-order it next week when you can pre. I was making Hogue laugh on a show we did because I was like, I don't want to pre-order these games too soon and give them the wrong idea. I only like to pre-order just like day or two before they come out, and then when you can just download them, I'm like, no, I don't want you to have my money too soon. It's totally meaningless and arbitrary. But one game, Dustin, that Famitsu did give really good reviews to was Metaphor ReFantazio, and Cypress Davis wrote into us about this. He says, "Greetings, CDC. Can we get a gut check on Metaphor ReFantazio? I know it's early, but based on the prologue demo, this will most likely be my game of the year. Thank you for everything you guys do." So this is the new role-playing game from the team that makes Persona, right? Specifically. So a Catherine-like project, I guess, in that it's an interstitial, and unrelated. I know very little about this game, but I'm going to just buy it and play it when it comes out. And just based on the pedigree of the team, and it's something new and fresh, hopefully. What's your feeling on this? I know Mike is really excited about it too.
Yeah, so the demo's out, and I feel like I read somewhere that it's up to 10 hours.
That's what Micah said, that it was like really long. I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did download it, and I started to play the beginning of it, like maybe the first 30 minutes. And I had the realization that, because my thought was, well, I'll be able to play this, and then by the time I get back from Japan, it'll be out. And so it's basically just starting early. But I then realized that I didn't want to take 10 days away from playing it. So I stopped the demo. I wasn't immediately super intrigued by what was going on in the story, but it's again so early. So I'm not making I don't want to make any kind of official comment about what I think about it, especially because the people that played the full 10 hours of the demo, resounding, overwhelmingly love it. People think it's going to be their game of the year. So I'm still very excited. But it is an odd one because I feel like in some ways I would rather just have a new Persona game, and I'm not fully in on the more traditional fantasy approach. But right now I know so little, so I could be totally wrong, and people that played the demo are laughing at what I'm saying. But either way, I'm there. Both of those games come out when I'm in Japan, that and Silent Hill, so I'm going to have plenty to play when I get back.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And are you going to play it, Chris?
I'm definitely going to check the demo out. Persona's weird because like I like a lot of the aspects of it. I just think it's also one of these things where it's like, I think I'm kind of like you with Yakuza, Colin, in some way, where I'm just like, I'm not going to play the first one, but I'm going to play the fifth and fourth one. Like, I understand that they're not necessarily, you know, super sequential in that way, but like, I mean, I don't know. This seems a little bit more approachable because it's new, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, the 15th game in like a long running series. Like, this feels a little bit more approachable. I've always liked the Persona style and the music, and even just something about the layout of certain things. Like, it's what intrigues me it's what intrigues me most about that Expedition 33 game, right? Where it's just like, oh, this is like Persona, but like, or like the UI is like Persona, which I like. And it's like, yeah, so I'll definitely give the demo a try. But
yeah, that Expeditions game comes out soon.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I think it's later this month, right?
Earlier. Is it that soon? I thought that was next year.
I think there's a mix up because Expedition 33 is 2025.
Yeah, that's
Expedition,
next year.
and that's the Expedition 33 is the one that we're talking about.
That's the French JRPG.
Oh, maybe it's like a different. I just looked at. I just honestly, I really just looked at a 2024 release list on like GameSpot. I think I control F Expedition.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think
it's probably some other Expedition. Oh, okay, so that's good. Good.
But this
that's actually a kind of a relief. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Like,
because I was really these 3 games in sequence are going to keep me busy for a while. Apparently, Metaphor is 80 hours. So.
Oh fuck yeah,
that's what's
right.
I'll definitely play as much of it as I can allow, but if I enjoy the demo. But yeah, this next stretch of time, I'm like kind of trying to eye certain things. There's like that Dragon Ball game that I've been kind of like, I don't know. I'm a little disappointed with some things about it, but at the same time, it's the first time we've gotten a Dragon Ball game like this in ages, and I kind of want to support it to show that like we want more of this. But that, and then there's Dragon Age, which I'm kind of curious about, and I'm actually like, I'm skeptical of the cynicism at this point. Like, I actually feel like they might have something. Obviously, like a Horizons is somewhat soon. Plucky Squire I still have to get to. That's been in like on my cross media bar. I just haven't started it up yet. So I'm still in the middle of Mass Effect 3 as well. So like I'm kind of busy like with a lot of games right now. So it's but Silent Hill is definitely going to slip in there. Until Dawn, I think it's just kind of have to, you know, I'll hold off.
Yeah, it'll probably go. I don't think it's going to do very well. It'll probably go on sale at some point, and you can pick it up later. Some people are saying that is this a spoiler? I don't think it is. I mean, it's in some sense.
Interesting.
Is that a spoiler? What do you think of that?
I don't necessarily think so.
Should we beep it out?
I really don't know.
Go ahead and beep it out.
Beep
keep
it out.
Everything else, just beep it out. But just beep it out.
Beep out.
Where it says "Until Dawn." Beep.
It's just a long sustained.
We haven't had a beep in a while. And then Sergey wrote into us and said, "Dear SS Squad, correction. I'm issuing a big stand down to all of you and possibly revoking your true PlayStation fan pass. You've been rightfully raving about Astrobot, and Colin felt that he didn't get enough of a challenge. But where can you get an amazing second-party platformer with an amazing level of challenge in the last level that will tear you a new one? Sackboy, A Big Adventure. Don't think any of you played it, and I really highly recommend it if you want to prolong this honeymoon period with PlayStation platformers. Platinumed it last year and had a blast. Actually had some deja vu while playing Astro because of how similar some sections are. I have heard good things about this game, but I think I might even own it. Either I bought it because it was a launch game, right? I might have bought it at launch, or it was on PS Plus at some point. I have to kind of look.
I played it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was fine. I would like to get back to it someday. And this write-in reminds me about it, but saying it's as good as Astro?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, that's pretty heavy, but it could be. But I feel like it wouldn't have fallen through the sieve as it did if it didn't, if it was as good as Astro. But I could be wrong. Thank you for putting it back on our radar, Sergey. Fair enough. You will.
All right. No actual real news this week, so we can go right into the listener inquiries. 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to end every episode of Sacred Symbols from patreon.com/lastnamemedia. I put up a thread in the newsfeed each week soliciting your inquiries. You put them in that thread. You've heard a bunch of them throughout the show already, and now here are 6 more as we bid you adieu. Matt H. wrote in and said, hello, Sacred Gents. After Astrobot got me feeling all nostalgic about PlayStation, I decided to dive a little deeper into that feeling by revisiting Ape Escape. The version I grew up with was the PSP remake on the loose, and playing through the game and just generally interacting with that hardware has me realizing just how much I love the PSP. I feel like all my favorite PS franchises got great entries on the little handheld that could: the God of War duology, Ratchet, Jack, Metal Gear, Gran Turismo, Little Big Planet, Kingdom Hearts, Persona, Final Fantasy, not to mention the ability to play the OG PS1 games via classics. I could keep going on, but I'll stop here. All this is to say I think the PSP is my favorite generation of PlayStation. Having what amounted to a portable PS2 was such a revelation when I got mine for Christmas in 2005, and I think it ultimately changed the way I interact with and appreciate video games. How about y'all? Where do you think the PSP fits amongst the pantheon of PlayStation platforms? Any fond memories? What are your favorite PSP games? We don't talk about PSP very often on this show. Not comparable to being a PlayStation show in the amount we talk about a lot of other hardware like the Vita that sold 1/4 the amount of units as the PSP. Chris, where are you on the PlayStation Portable in hindsight with a little, with a little bit of thought and a little bit of distance? I think we can kind of see things a little more clearly. So where do you sit on the PSP now?
Yeah, man, I'm like Colin with the Vita with the PSP, man. Like I'm an unabashed fanboy of that thing. I love everything about that machine. I remember getting it for the first time and just feeling like I had something truly next generation in my pocket was wild. And by the way, not next generation as in, it's better than what we have, right? It's better than the PS2, but that it was comparable at all was like mind-blowing at the time, because the Game Boy to me, that was always somewhat of a, we have the PS1, the N64, Xbox and PS2 are like relatively fresh. Here's Game Boy Advance. It's they're good games on it, but it's definitely like, this is the most that we can do in your pocket right now is kind of emulate consoles from a generation ago or 2 generations ago. Like that's the best that we have that we can do, which was cool, in some ways I think it kind of allowed Dustin and my generation to kind of like appreciate a large swath of games in ways that probably other people born later probably would have a harder time doing. I appreciate growing up in that time a lot as far as like video game appreciation goes. But, getting a PSP at the same time as the PS2 and like playing a game like Wipeout Pure or something where it's just like, this feels like a PS2 game, but it's in my pocket. Like that's wild. And it was our like preview of the PS3's like a UI with like the cross media bar. So at the time it felt kind of futuristic. To the point where like actually like, when I got the PS3, I was a little bit disappointed that the UI was good, because by that point, the PSP's UI, like the PS3 UI felt like a portable UI to me, because that's how I associated with it.
That's interesting.
And so like, yeah, dude, I loved that machine. I love the aesthetic. I love the branding of it. I think they nailed it with the way that it was supposed to feel, the way that it communicated, the amount of support that it got, the design of the thing. I love the original PSP with like the silver ring on the back of the UMD drive. Even just similar, even just the UMD drive themselves. Like I know it's like dumb that they did that. It's like, here's a cartridge and a disc, but there's something so unholy about that that's like inherently interesting. It's a cartridge-based disc. That's so weird and so cool and interesting. And even the slim boxes, like the tall, thin boxes that the PSP games used to come in.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I love that machine. I love that machine. I have nothing but fond memories about it. I even have some movies on it. I think I had like Are We There Yet or something, like an Ice Cube movie on PSP that I would watch like incessantly because I thought it was so cool that you could do that.
It was cool for a minute. It was ridiculous and unnecessary, but it was.
Yeah, yeah. It was the definition of novelty, in some way. But they nailed certain things that the PS Vita just kind of didn't. I think the feel of the machine, like I really think the PS Vita dropped on branding. There is something about the PSP and like the angular logo and like the the PS3 kind of cross media bar interface. Something about the PS Vita that like the PS Vita should be remembered a lot better than the PSP in some way, because it's like objectively like a way better machine. But I do think the whole like gimmicky like, oh, turn the page with your finger, and like the Fisher Price kind of bubble setup
Yeah,
with
yeah.
like your games on bubbles, it kind of felt like I don't even know what the word is. Almost like infantilizing in some way. It's just like treat me like I just bought like a high end piece of machinery, please.
Yeah, that's
In
fair
some
enough.
way.
Definitely ages like that more, the Vita.
Yeah.
I was a little more patient with it at the time. Dustin, where are you on the PSP, your PSP memory?
So I looked it up. The day I got a PSP was June 13th, 2009. And I remember this day because I looked it up. I picked it up from a Craigslist deal on the way to Pittsburgh to see No Doubt and Paramore at the Post Gazette Pavilion. So that was the exact day that I got my white Star Wars Battlefront PSP that had
that one.
Darth Vader on the back. Still have it. And what's funny is I don't even really remember playing it that much. I was so interested in installing custom firmware on it, running emulators, things like that. And yeah, it's funny to think now how the market is so into these modern handhelds that play console level games. And PSP really was the beginning of that. And dude, you bring up the UMDs too. I'm looking at, there's a whole list here. I'll just send you guys what I found. There's a list of every UMD movie released, and there are so many more. There are, on this list, there's 667.
That's so insane.
And I was thinking, like, what is the strangest movie to watch
on PSP?
On UMD?
I wonder
the
if
Passion of the
anyone collects
Christ
this stuff
on it?
Someone must collect this, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of UMD collectors, but
I want to watch Passion of the Christ on PSP. Just something
Passion of
really
the Christ.
something.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, the Passion of the Christ, or like Sophie's Choice. Just something that really does not belong on such a casual.
This is impressive,
theater.
dude. Like how many there are, you know?
I'm looking.
It's like everything that came out.
Let's see, like, what are the most expensive UMDs?
Oppenheimer.
Rain
They
of
released a
Fire?
Sherlock Holmes DMD in 2010, according to this.
Yeah.
Dude, Goodfellas. Imagine sitting down the way Scorsese intended to watch Goodfellas.
he would be fucking furious.
Yeah, I know. He'd be so
oh my
mad.
god. His eyes would be bleeding, I think. And just like you telling him, it's like, hey, I saw your movie on PSP. And then you show it to him, and it's like a fucking, it looks like a goddamn Tamagotchi to him. Or just something. It's like, you're watching one of my masterpieces on a Tamagotchi, you piece of shit. You motherfucker, you.
You motherfucker.
You motherfucker. Kill this guy.
I'm trying to. There's one here that's listed for $146, and it just has this Japanese woman in her underwear. Was there a porn?
Oh, yeah, there was I saw a video, like there was this, I wish I could remember the YouTuber's name, this guy covering all of the weird like UMD movies on PSP. And I think he ended the movie where he burned Oppenheimer onto a custom UMD, and it was just the dumbest thing possible. But yeah, they're like one of the biggest selling, or like one of the rarest things I think on PSP was like they did put out a porn movie like on UMD that you can just like, it's straight up, it's just a porno film.
Well,
God bless.
certainly a device for it. So
Definitely a device for the Japanese.
Sony released A Few Good Men in 2008 on the UMD. Interesting. All right. PSP memories. PSP came out when I was in college and I had no money and I couldn't afford it. Someone that I lived with got one. I'm like so shot now at this point, but I don't even remember some of these people's names at this point. You know, you live with people for like a semester or 2 semesters and you just never see each other. And like, I don't remember this guy's name, but he was from Rhode Island. He was really nice. He actually had a Rhode Island state flag on his wall, I remember, which is like the anchor. And I needed access to a PSP because I was getting jobs from IGN as a freelancer to do strategy guides for PSP games if I had access to one. And I was like, and so he let me borrow one. And the first game I ever played on it was I want to say it was like Valkyria Chronicles or something, or not Valkyria Chronicles, Lenneth, Valkyria. It was the one that you just played, Elysium. Is that Valkyria Chronicles? What is that called? Valkyria something.
What am I thinking?
Valkyrie Profile.
Valkyrie Profile.
That's what it was. Valkyrie Profile Lenneth.
Lenneth. Yeah.
And then because it's important to remember too, I was always a big PlayStation fan. I had a PS1 since 97 and I got a PS2 immediately. I didn't get a PS3 until I worked at IGN because I was poor. And I was in college and I definitely couldn't afford one of those, but I was a huge Nintendo fanboy. So like in terms of handhelds, I was more than satisfied with Game Boy Advance and DS at this time. Like I had no interest in the PSP. I was like, I'm not even interested, to be honest with you. And so I was really much more of a DS, and I guess by that point, certainly a DS person, still playing some Game Boy Advance stragglers or whatever. But when I moved to San Francisco, I got my own PSP in 2007. And I bought it when Castlevania Dracula X came out on PSP. And then I also bought like Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 2, those kind of like chibi remakes that they did.
Yeah.
Of those and a few other games at that time. Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions is a really wonderful port of Final Fantasy Tactics that's on PSP as well. And it really became like a role-playing game machine for me right on to the end when like you cap out with games like Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, Final Fantasy IV Complete Collection, and so on and so forth. So I remember PSP for that, but Dustin, you hit on the nail on the head. Is like the PSP was like the NES and SNES emulation machine. And
yeah,
I honestly, out of all 6 or 7 now pieces of PSP or PlayStation hardware, I wouldn't count 5 yet because we don't know the full breadth of it, but PSP is like the least resonant hardware with me personally. But it sold 80 million units. It had a couple games that sold many millions of units. The Grand Theft Auto games, I think, sold like 8 and 6 or something like that million each.
Yeah, man.
So that's pretty nice for nothing on Vita sold anywhere close to that. So
I think because you're like such a 2D oriented person, and the PSP really was like kind of this thing where it's like, listen, you can get like modern 3D games in your pocket, like you can do it, and they'll be like really of a high quality. Like it makes sense why it didn't necessarily. It didn't resonate with you specifically. Like I could see why that would be the case. The thing that I'm so fascinated by with that hardware is like that's kind of that generation where like you would get different versions of the same game, at different places. Like there would be like an N-Gage version of something.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd be like, why? But what the most fascinating thing on PSP to me is Spider-Man 2, because obviously like in the context of like console gaming, Spider-Man 2 is like a really historic like moment. Like it's like that big. Not only was it like a fantastic superhero like movie license game, which at the time wasn't as rare as it would become, but was still kind of like notable. It was like this big open world kind of triumph. It's like, oh, look, it's physics, it's cool. Obviously, the template for Insomniac Spider-Man later on, as like many people at that studio have admitted openly, be foolish not to. But there was a version of Spider-Man 2 on the PSP that obviously could not do that. But it was like a reskin of Spider-Man 1 for the Xbox and PS2 using like the script of Spider-Man 2, and like it reused certain levels, but like they changed certain. It's such a weird game, and it's only playable on PSP. And it's so weird because it's Spider-Man 2, but you're swinging on the clouds, and it's just like, and you're hitting the same henchman with like the same combos, and they're like, looks like the freak wants to play. And it's like, what? This is so weird that this is real. And this is just, and it's just living on this machine. Interesting stuff on that handheld. By the way, that was a good game. Spider-Man 2 for the PSP, actually pretty good, even though it was just Spider-Man 1.2, I guess, in some way.
Well, Matt, thank you for writing in about PSP. Always good to talk about PlayStation Portable, and it's good that we're getting quite a few PSP games on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 now, which is nice. So I expect we'll see many, many more to come. Out of Focus Bigfoot wrote in. Said, gentlemen, now that the dust has settled after the state of play, I have only one question. Where is Pragmata? Announced in June 2020, originally set to release in 2022, and 2021 delayed to 2023. In June 2023, Capcom released a 1-minute trailer, further delaying the game for an unspecified amount of time. Then Pragmata went dark. We are now closing in on 2025. Capcom was confident enough not to just announce the game, but announce a release window as well. What kind of absolute catastrophic disaster is going on behind the scenes here? Did they tear the game down and start over? Is it ever coming out? If it does, will it be any good, or do we get a skull and bones situation? Thank you for your time. I'll hang up and listen. It's a great question. It's unclear what's going on with Pragmata. I did some research for you to see if there was like anything that I missed, and there were a couple of things that I guess are worth noting, but not really. So you're absolutely right about your timeline. The game was shown during one of the PS5 kind of showcases in 2020, and it was dated for 2022 at that time. And then in 2021, it was shown again, and it was delayed to 2023. There's that picture of the little girl that's in Pragmata, and she's holding like the sign that says 2022 with it X'd out, and it says 2023 sorry or something on it. It was a cool idea. And then then last year they show it, and the second year it was supposed to come out, and they're like, oh, it's just delayed indefinitely. And we are now into 2025. So what has happened here? The answer is unclear. I imagine what I'd like to think would happen, and especially, and I'm definitely going to give Capcom the benefit of the doubt, because I think they have more than earned the benefit of the doubt at this point with a lot of their projects in recent memory. As I was saying on the show I appeared on recently, it's like the era of Crapcom is, so far behind us at this point. They're doing a great job. So I believe that they're going to treat Pragmata with respect. The idea is like, do they see something in it that they want to get better? Do they think it could be better than it is? Is it fundamentally broken and need to be rebuilt? Or all those? It's something clearly is going on with it. But if they're reworking it behind the scenes, they believe in it enough not to just cancel it, which would be a thing you would do if the game just was failing to come together. So I went on PlayStation.com just to see what they have to say about it. The game does still have an object on PSN. You can add it to your wish list right now with TBA as the release date, of course. But everything about it is vague. It says, quote, travel to a dystopian near future and explore a unique lunar world coming to PS5 consoles. Lose yourself in a brand new sci-fi action adventure game from Capcom, the creators of Resident Evil and Devil May Cry. So it's just like this kind of slop. But there is one thing. There's a leaker called Dusk Golem that we've talked about in the past. And I found something that he had said about the game, or about what it's actually about. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but he said back in the spring that this was what it was about. Quote, Pragmata is about two robots who live on a failed attempt to colonize the moon, which was abandoned after robots and AI took over the moon, and humans just disabled their ability to reach them on Earth rather than deal fully with the problem. And we play as two robots who are starting to become strikingly human through the robots evolving who desire to go to Earth. Sounds kind of cool. So in other words, like, this like we were fucking around on the moon, these robots went rogue, and then we just abandoned them there.
Yeah.
So nice idea. Horror vibes, obviously. Capcom well known for those. And so I'm looking forward to it, but I have no further details. But this is a mystery. I assume we'll hear more when the time comes. Maybe you would see something at Video Game Awards with a release date or something, but I don't know for sure. But I am confident that they will figure it out, merely because I think Capcom has really done a very nice job recently. More than recently, and for years at this point, actually. All right. Vincent Cashel wrote in and said, what's up, Sacred Lads? What are your thoughts on the new California law that bans the words buy and purchase for digital content when you're simply buying a license to that content instead? Personally, although this isn't a stark change, is at least a step in the right direction to inform consumers that owning a digital license isn't the same as owning the product itself. Also, do you expect these digital storefronts to change this buy-purchase wording across every state and country, or just limit it to California? Thanks as always, and watching the San Diego video reminded me of what a great time it was. I'll never forget Colin's face when I told him I started listening to him in elementary school during the VIP session. I'm looking forward to whatever live show comes next. That stuff makes me feel so old when people say that about me, but that's fine because it's true, Okay. So Vincent, the California law is interesting. I don't think it's going to affect. Let me back up. The European Union voted on all sorts of things that affect like electronics. And this affects global electronics because it's just easier to manufacture one item. So a good example is Apple's being kind of coerced into using USB-C happened because of European laws about wire waste and how they don't want, and it's a good idea. It's like, why do we have all these fucking wires? We really could just use one wire to do everything, or a few wires around our house to do what we need to do. So Apple lost that lawsuit, and then they're not going to make a European only phone. So they're just like, well, all the phones are going to change. But that's a physical good. I think that like with this, through IP and all of the rest, and like knowing where you are, geolocating you could probably just serve certain versions of the stores to these places in the meantime. But Dustin, how do you feel about this, generally speaking, about being more clear about what you're buying and not buying?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good thing that people have an understanding of what the difference between a digital purchase and a physical purchase. It is a little odd just in that Yeah, there are certain games that you could buy a physical copy of and play it to some degree as long as you have a working console forever. But there are other games too that, like Concord, you can buy a physical copy of it, but it doesn't do anything now. So was that also kind of a license as well that had a physical key to it? Certainly that's the case. And there are certainly physical copies that don't have anything on them. Not all of them. That's a major thing that people believe that isn't true, that every game is just a digital key that unlocks a download. It's not always the case. But I guess it's good for it to be more clear. I don't know if it's like a huge important thing that it's worth making a law about, and it's only California. So I'm curious if PlayStation will just apply it to the store for all of the US, I would assume, but I guess it's a good thing. Consumers being more informed about what they're buying is never bad in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm muted. Here's the I was looking it up to find the specific text because the law was passed or signed by Gavin Newsom last week or in late September, and it's Assembly Bill number 2426, Chapter 513. It says, quote, existing law makes it unlawful for any person doing business in California and advertising to consumers in California to make any false or misleading advertising claim. Existing law makes a person who violates specified false advertising provisions liable for a civil penalty as specified, and provides that a person who violates those false advertising provisions is guilty of a misdemeanor. This bill would, subject to specified exceptions, additionally prohibit a seller of a digital good from advertising or offering for sale a digital good as defined to a purchaser with the terms buy, purchase, or any other term which a reasonable person would understand to confer an unrestricted ownership interest in the digital good or alongside an option for a time-limited rental, unless the seller receives at the time of each transaction an affirmative acknowledgement from the purchaser, or the seller provides to the consumer before executing each transaction a clear and conspicuous statement as specified. So it's pretty clear what effect this would have on PSN and other digital storefronts. I don't hate it, though. You should be somewhat clear about it. We need to figure out different vernacular. Yeah. If you are buying a license, and you could call it all sorts of things, maybe even have an asterisk next to buy or some sort of screen that confirms, and you're just going to scroll through it and not read it anyway, but it's like terms of service or something, and you confirm that you understand that you're not buying the game but a license. I don't know. I have no problem with this personally, but I don't think it's going to affect wider marketplaces because unlike the iPhone example, it is a digital good and can be IP, targeted based on your location. They don't have to do anything else. But yeah. I don't hate it. And I hate a lot of the shit California does because California is like very much in everyone's business all the time. I remember because I lived there and all the different things you could vote for and all the red tape and all of the rest. But maybe it's better to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Izzy Smalls wrote in and said, hey, Sacred Crew, former freeloader and new patron here. Love the show, but one thing I got to ask is why do some in the LSM crew harp on Sony's over-the-shoulder third-person games as if that makes them similar in any meaningful way? The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima play nothing alike. Uncharted and Horizon play nothing alike. While we're at it, can we shut the fuck up about the sad dad simulator? Sony makes 2 games with depressed fathers, just 2. Joking aside, why do we demand such portfolio diversity from Sony, but Nintendo can release the same handful of games until the sun explodes and no one seems to give a fuck? He's saying AF, by the way. I'm just reading it out. I'm not saying AF, but I just did, I guess. I listened to Punching Up and haven't heard any demand for new IP on that side of the block. Keep up the great work. It is reductive. I mean, I kind of play into it in some sense myself. I mean, sad dads and not so much the third person stuff, because I do agree that's reductive. Like things being in a third person perspective that's like ubiquitous to 3D gaming. I mean, there's really only one other way to do it. So like that games would be from a third person perspective is not a huge surprise in my opinion. So I do think it's reductive. I also agree fully, not to be a Nintendo hater, that they do seem to get away with. Like you see all of the remasters that they do and everyone's like, it's like the happy Wojak and then like all the remasters Sony does and it's like the sad, angry Wojak. And I'm like, yeah, there is a difference to the way these companies are treated. There's no doubt. But that's just the way it goes. Chris, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, I mean, we're definitely playing it up, obviously. Like it's, obviously they make more than one type of game. I do think it's funny though that they make You said that they only make 2 games about depressed fathers. Like that's more than you would assume. That's like kind of like it's weird that there is more than one at all.
And they've made games about depressed fathers before this. Like when you look at second party stuff like Heavy Rain we were talking about earlier. That's
right.
About a deeply depressed father.
It is funny how it's just more common than you would expect it to be, and that's a little funny because it then leads into just really absurdist, like the Gran Turismo car has like a tiny sad, like I don't know. There's it's funny to ruminate on, I guess, but it's definitely more of a joke than it otherwise would be. I think the third person perspective thing, I don't think there's any argument that they play the same. It's just that there is kind of a lack of diversity, I guess, at a glance in what we're getting, which doesn't really matter materialistically to the people playing, because ultimately, like, the people playing know the difference. It's like when people show, photos of shooters next to each other. It's like all these games are the same. It's like I think intrinsically we all know that they're different, because shooters can feel so different from one to the other. Same thing is true of third person games. But if there was one, let's say Xbox. I mean, they're widely criticized for being like Gears, Halo, Forza, right? But let's say Xbox put out 10 games, like Xbox themselves as a console manufacturer and as a publisher, they put out 10 games, and they're all first person shooters. I think it's reasonable to be like, it's kind of. I mean, can we get more kinds of things? You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that they're all the same. It's not necessarily that they all aren't good, but it would be cool to get a first-person shooter from a Sony first party at the expense of maybe another third-person game. It would be cool to get maybe a weird, a modern AAA Wipeout or something, just something different. Not that they're exactly the same, but a person onlooking would look at it and be like, there's really nothing there for me. If let's say you just have a history with third-person games and it's all negative for you because you just haven't played a good one, and then you see everything on PlayStation is third person, it's like, you're probably less likely to care, But I think the way you reach more markets is just by doing more different things. And I think Astrobot's actually a good example because that's a third-person game, but that you wouldn't see that in a side-by-side with Uncharted or The Last of Us or Horizon or any of these other games, because even though it is a third-person perspective game, it's different. Obviously. At a glance, it's obviously different. And so I think that's really what I'm talking about. I just want more than this. Not that what we're getting is bad, or not that we should get, that we shouldn't continue getting them, but I think there are territories left unexplored that I think would behoove Sony to cede a little bit of ground, or take a little bit of ground in.
Dustin, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that some of the criticism just comes from remembering a time that Sony had a lot more variety and wanting some of that back, like Chris is saying. So, yeah, we definitely play it up. Of course, it's funny to say that, but I guess just remembering the time before when you would see a game like Hot Shots Golf or Ape Escape or something like that. And it's nice. It's been refreshing seeing a game like Astrobot be very successful. And it's like, hey, Sony, you can do games other than it's not even necessarily that it's a third person over the shoulder, but it's just very serious cinematic style games. If we want to be more specific about what we mean. So, and yeah, of course, there's a case to be made with Nintendo just regurgitating stuff over and over again. And, I guess they do get a pass from their fans. Certainly, I'm one of them, and buy some of their stuff. But I guess with Nintendo, I just see still a lot of creative ideas and new ways to play within their established IPs often. So it is a little different, I would say. But yeah, let Punching Up say what they say, and let Sacred say what they say. There's no need to make a comparison there.
I agree. Kyle Day wrote in, said, hello, boys. Is there a specific feature or game mode that you simply don't understand its popularity? For me, it has to be photo mode. Yes, this is related to the Death Stranding 2 thing this week. I don't get the appeal outside of horny dudes with boob shots. Are people framing these photos? Are they actually sharing albums with people? Or am I just an old man yelling at clouds? I like you, Colin, will be 40 soon. Anyway, thanks as always. Dude, I agree with you. I don't understand the photo mode stuff either. And I've realized over time that I am just disconnected from reality since these things continuously get teased as major updates in games and people get excited about it. And I'm like, I don't understand what's so exciting about this, but teach their own, I suppose. Are you guys into photo mode, either of you, photo modes in games?
I got into it with Spider-Man 2 for a couple of I think that's one of those weird ones though where it kind of lends into because Peter Parker is a photographer, so like even though that's not how the photo mode is framed in Spider-Man, it feels like a little bit more naturally part of it than it otherwise. Like a photo mode in God of War feels like really strange in some sense. But I appreciate them largely because like I remember a time, or like I really have a fondness for theater mode in back in like Halo and like even some Call of Duties back in that time were doing theater mode after Halo 3, and I really love that idea, like the idea of like it'll save your game and you can watch your game back from any angle and people can get creative with it and like make stuff in it. And I think there's like it's really cool to have a piece of software like this that is designed to like tell it, oh, okay, like we're telling a story and it's a complicated game, but also it's also a sandbox and a tool set for you to do kind of this other stuff that is in some ways completely that lives outside of the game in some way. And I think that's cool. I think from a technical standpoint, it's kind of helpful just to be able to like gawk at just how far we've come, just be able to zoom in on Kratos' eyes and just see like, whoa, there's like 50 billion pixels in there. I don't really give a shit about that, but like there's value in that for like Digital Foundry and stuff. So I don't necessarily get excited about it, but I do think it's cool. I wish we had actually. I'm much more of a fan of theater mode personally, like where you could detach the camera and like actually orchestrate things and like capture them from different angles and stuff like that, as opposed to like the freeze frame kind of pose for a photo thing that has existed so far. But I think it's cool. I think the Death Stranding stuff is really interesting though, because like I scrolled past that a couple times on my timeline the day it broke, and I remember I didn't see like what the text was. I just saw the caption or like it, and my eyes glazed over it. I was like, oh, Death Stranding 2 stuff. I'm trying to be in the dark as possible with Death Stranding 2 because I know I want to go in as blind as I can, as I possibly can. And so I saw, the videos of the actors like dynamically posing or whatever. And at first I thought like, why is this news? They just have like the actors, I guess, like doing photos or something. Like I don't get it. And then when I realized that it was like the game, it kind of blew my mind because I thought it was just like the people, because like the animations are really good, and like granted it was on like on my phone screen, and I'm like it's nighttime, like I'm not really like looking deeply at it, trying to find like artifacting or whatever. But I was like fully convinced for like longer than I thought I would that was just like real people moving around, like and dynamically posing for photos. So there is something to be said about Kojima's ability to just take something that is generally mundane, like a photo mode, and doing something unique with it, even if it is ultimately something that is not deeply, interesting to me. It's cool that we still have people doing that,
What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, the photo mode, I enjoy using it once or twice. The last time I used one was for Space Marine 2, and it's because I wanted to tweet about the game. And I thought, I'll take a few screenshots. And I had fun doing that, but I don't consider myself some kind of game photographer by any means. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love seeing some of the screenshots that people make with the games. Very cool. But I don't really need it for me. I guess game modes that we don't understand in general, though. I don't understand the obsession with adding roguelike modes to games. Overall, this has been a big thing over the last few years, and I already am so extremely mixed on roguelike games where there are certain ones that I do get into and enjoy. Vampire Survivors clearly is a big one. I guess Balatro to some degree is also roguelike, but I just don't need that in God of War. And I at some point will play that roguelike mode just because I'm curious about the story implications, but doing the same thing over and over and getting slightly better each time with varying weapons it can be frustrating. That was the thing about Returnal to me, is that I would hate when I would play Returnal and I felt like I was constantly getting shit weapons. It's like, well, this run sucks. So I guess I should just restart. I don't really enjoy that. So I don't need it in already established games that I like.
I will say with photo mode specifically, I only use it if like a trophy is required or whatever, or you have to use it. I really wouldn't use it for any other reason. But I do agree with what was said earlier, which was it does seem like a confidence move on developers. Like, in other words, I don't believe that it's as popular as it seems. I believe it's a way to telegraph. It's like, look how confident we are about how our game looks. Like, we'll let you literally look from any angle and any scene, take a picture, fuck with it, mess with gradients and grains and all sorts of different things. It's cool, but I can't imagine I'm not into that. But I imagine if you're more into the aesthetic qualities of games, and I do like the aesthetic, but I mean, if you're an artist or something like that, then maybe you'd be more into it, or a photographer, obviously. But yeah, it's just not for me. I'm confused by it too. And it's clear that it's just a thing because people ask for it. It's constantly teased and shown. Games seem to hold them back. Similar to New Game Plus, it's like another marketing, like post-release marketing beat in some sense. But Kyle, thank you for writing in. Finally, Matthew O'Sullivan wrote in and said, quote, "So calm this spooky night, a symphony of rumors, not one but two. Return from shadow, a resistance to dart home as black monsters escape twisted hills to wander lands and siphon souls. Filter your candy collection soft from solid and be eco-friendly. Have a metal Halloween," end quote. It's been almost 5 years since Bluepoint tweeted this out, and hindsight sure makes it interesting. What are your thoughts on the remaining references that are yet to be either revealed or canceled? Perhaps some, e.g. Resistance, are simply just cruel teases? I am quite surprised, however, how many of them have come to pass one way or another. I don't know what to make of this. This haunted us on the show, like for years. Because it was like, why would you do this? Now, there's a few things that I think are necessary to remember. Is like Bluepoint was not with Sony at this time. So they were certainly not going to be under the thumb of like a very careful PR and marketing team. They were obviously working on Demon's Souls at this time, but they might have had other opportunities or have been doing other things, other contracting, whatever. So I say that only because things are going to be a lot looser there then than they would be now. Like, this would have never been tweeted out if they were with Sony. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, I think they're referencing in hindsight so many different things that it just seemed to be like my money would be on like it just being a dickheaded thing to do. Like, oh, let's just like fuck with people a little bit. And there are a ton of references in it. It's crazy. But really, you said some of them have come true, but like, not really. I mean, there's no Siphon Filter. There's no new Castlevania. There's no new Resistance. There's no new Legend of Dragoon or Twisted Metal, and so on and so forth. So it was weird. What are your remembrances of this, Chris?
Honestly, this I think I successfully repressed it until I until I heard you read this out. I saw this was in the document, obviously, but like this is. I'm still kind of baffled by this, but like at the same time, I'm not necessarily surprised that a lot of this stuff that is casually tweeted out just doesn't come to fruition. I can't even count how many times I've been led to believe things about Splinter Cell that are just never going to happen, or even just like we talk about it on the show, the Resistance stuff, like Insomniac being like, Resistance, look, it's the Chimera, and it's just like, okay, cool. Are you doing something? And they're like, no. In fact, here's Spider-Man 8 times. And it's like, okay, great. Don't know why you did that then. That's really cruel.
Yeah, it is weird. I think it's weird too.
So I just tend to, at this point, at the time it was a little bit novelty and we were like, what could this mean? But now I honestly, like, I feel like I'm jaded from anything that isn't a trailer. If you're not going to announce it at a showcase or have a trailer or even just a press release, if it's just a tweet, it holds no value to me. EA could come tomorrow and tweet like Titanfall with like an eye emoji, and I'd be like, cool. That means fuck all to me until I see it. It's over.
What do you think, Dustin? You weren't on the show at this point, actually.
No, I wasn't on the show, but looking back in hindsight, I think this is the social media person at Bluepoint saying we like to do a little trolling.
Yeah,
we do a little trolling here.
Yeah,
so
we like to do a little bit of trolling. We like We like putting out El Shaddai on all platforms, including Switch, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, I think this is meaningless now, and gotta be careful. The trolls aren't just outside of the industry, but maybe within. So be on your guard.
Yeah, I think so. Why not? Why not fuck with people like us? I would.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So, well, that's it. Kind of a light week for news this week, but we got through it in the end. Maybe things will be a little more exciting next week. Certainly we'll have things to start talking about that we're playing more deeply in these weeks to come, which is very exciting as well. But let's go around the horn and say goodbye to everyone before we go. Chris, goodbye to you. Be well. What's on your agenda for the rest of the day?
Gotta go to the bank, do some grocery shop. It's a really it's a boring, like, be a human being kind of day. You know, like, it's just maintenance. It's too mundane to even get into. I think at this point. But I will say that we had such a long conversation in the beginning of the show about, like, Five Guys, and there was all sorts of food being brought up, and now I'm like, I've been sitting since then with, like, a deep hunger, even though I had breakfast, where I'm like, I'm gonna get me a Five Guys burger. I think.
Oh, that's nice. Good for you.
It's been a minute. Been a minute. Although maybe I shouldn't, because I, like, ate so much pizza while I was in New York. It's disgusting. I was, like, really throwing myself for a loop, but whatever.
Do what feels good all the time. That's what I say. Dustin, goodbye to you. Be well. What's on your agenda for the rest of the day?
Not much on the agenda today that I can even think of, really. Tomorrow, I'm going to Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, which Ben and I do have, like, a little panel meet and greet thing that it kind of came together last minute because we were scheduled to be on it, and then us and the organizers, they didn't know what was going on with me because I was taking time away. But so we are doing that. If you're hearing this now, very unlikely you'll be able to make it in time, but we are doing that. So hopefully I'll see a few of you there. And then, yeah, I'm going to be off the show for 2 weeks. So when I am in Japan, and then when I get back, next time you'll see me, I'm going to be at my parents' house recording the episode after that, because we're going to go down and hang out with them for a little bit. So be well while I'm gone, and take it easy in the Discord. Don't get too nuts. And then in November, I'm back. I'm fully back in November. So Get ready.
Cool. Convenient, right before we go off again.
It's a whole month. Whole month. Dude, and we really crammed like 2 months into that 1 month.
It's gonna be busy time. I think I'm looking forward to it though, because I need time off. I'm like fucking totally shot in the head. Well, konnichiwa to you, and enjoy yourself over there. And be safe and have fun.
Irashimase.
Oh, yes. Hi.
I don't know what that means.
Hi.
All right. Guys, be well. Thank you all out there for your love and kindness of all things Sacred Symbols, Last Stand Media, etc. Patreon.com/Last Stand Media for early ad-free access and all of the perks you get over there. LastStandMedia.store for merch. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.